Aotearoa whalu.
E te atua kaharawa, ka tuku whoka moi miti atu mātou, mō ngā karakia kua waihotia mai ki runga I a mātou, ka waiho I o mātou panga whaiaro katoa ki te taha, ka mihi mātou ki te kingi mi te inoi atu, mō te arahitanga I roto I o mātou whakaaroarohanga, kia mōhio ai, kia whakaiti ai tā mātou whakahaere I ngā take o te whare nei. Mō te oranga, te mō ngā rongo, me te aroha o Aotearoa. Āmine.
Amen. The Honourable Louise Upson.
Today the House will adjourn until Tuesday the 7th of October. That week the House will consider the Hauraki Gulf Tikapa Moana Marine Protection Bill, the Responding to Abuse in Care Legislation Amendment Bill. Wednesday will be a Members' Day, and on Thursday morning we will have extended hours for government business.
A petition has been delivered to the Clerk for presentation.
Petition of Diane Cross requesting that the House require a lawyer or trust company to fully disclose to a client the cost and method of administering their will.
That petition stands referred to the Petitions Committee. Ministers have delivered 3 papers.
Annual reports for 2025 for the Electricity Corporation of New Zealand, Kiwi Group Capital and the New Zealand Parole Board.
Those papers are published under the authority of the House. 5 Select Committee reports have been delivered for presentation.
Reports of the Education and Workforce Committee on the petition of Chin Chin, on the report of the Controller and Auditor General, Ministry of Education, promoting equitable educational outcomes. Reports of the Finance and Expenditure Committee on the inquiry into performance reporting and public accountability and the Standard Annual Review Questionnaire 2024-25. Report of the Health Committee on the briefing on suicide prevention in the construction sector.
The reports on the Controller and Auditor General's report, the inquiry, the briefing and the Standard Annual Review Questionnaires are set down for consideration. The House now comes to oral questions. The first in the name of Carmel Sepuloni.
Mr Speaker, to the Prime Minister, does he stand by all his government statements and actions?
The Honourable David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, yes. In particular, a number of actions where a group of ministers and departments have worked together very effectively to reduce youth crime. In Northland, for example, that is down by 40%, and it comes from a focus by ministers such as Karen Chua and Oranga Tamariki, Mark Mitchell, and the police, who have allowed young offenders to be detained and corrected rather than continuing on with ram raids.
Mr Speaker, will the New Zealand government recognise the unfolding genocide taking place in Gaza, particularly following the UN commissioned report that concluded that, quote, statements made by Israeli authorities are direct evidence of genocidal intent, end quote?
Mr Speaker, as has been made clear by a range of ministers across the government, that is a matter under active consideration by the government at the present time. Our position will be made clear by the right minister, the right place at the right time, which is coming up very soon.
Mr Speaker, was the Minister of Foreign Affairs correct when he said that the Deputy Prime Minister, David Seymour, was, quote, talking out of his field, end quote, regarding the government's position on Palestinian statehood?
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, actually he was speaking as the leader of his party, and that's a matter for him which I don't have responsibility for, as is abundantly clear from the transcript.
Here we go. Mr Speaker, was the Minister of Foreign Affairs correct when he said that David Seymour's statement regarding the recognition of Palestinian statehood, quote, was made by someone who's got no authority to make it, end quote.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, it is certainly correct that the authority to make that statement on behalf of the government rests with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. However, it is also true that this is a government of 3 different parties with leaders who each lead a party with its own identity, and from the point of view of the opposition, this government is dangerously united.
Supplementary. Is the constant public disagreement between 2 of the government's most senior figures undermining the clarity and credibility of our foreign policy and the reason why this government is still sitting on its hands?
Mr. Speaker, in answer to the first assertion in the question, there is not constant disagreement. There is a group of parties which have their own identities and are able to keep those identities and continue to work together in a cohesive and effective way. There is a real problem in many people's view is that you cannot have differences of opinion, you must conform. That is a view that is often associated with the left. People find it smothering, and around the world it's making the left of politics very unpopular.
Supplementary. When will he instruct his Deputy Prime Minister and his Minister for Foreign Affairs to stop bickering, join our international partners, recognise Palestinian statehood, recognise the unfolding genocide, and implement the sanctions that thousands of New Zealanders are calling for?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, first of all, we have a team that works together very effectively, and far too effectively for the opposition's liking. In fact, dangerously effective in such a way that it's going to keep the opposition right where they are for a very long time on the substance of the issue. You see, the reason that this government is taking a deliberative view, considering all the details carefully, that's because we believe this issue deserves the careful consideration that we're giving it.
Question to Tim van der Molen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Trade and Investment.
Just hold on for a moment. Questions are asked in silence. Yeah, your voice I heard.
My question is to the Minister for Trade and Investment. What recent steps has the government taken to strengthen New Zealand's trade and investment relationship with Saudi Arabia?
Well, Mr. Speaker,
Honourable,
the government...
sorry?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Tom McLean.
Mr. Speaker, the government has moved quickly to deepen ties with one of the world's most dynamic economies, worth nearly $3 trillion annually. In the last month, we've established the New Zealand-Saudi Arabia Business Council, agreed with Saudi's investment minister to create a cooperation framework between Invest New Zealand and the Saudi government's investment agency, and led a trade mission just this week to Riyadh of high-quality New Zealand businesses, where 5 new commercial partnerships worth more than $100 million were secured. These are practical outcomes that will mean more opportunities and stronger returns for New Zealand exporters and more jobs for New Zealanders.
Supplementary. What will the New Zealand-Saudi Arabia Business Council deliver for New Zealand exporters?
Well, Mr. Speaker, business councils are a proven way to build stronger commercial connections and support exporters to succeed. A dedicated New Zealand-Saudi Arabia Business Council will raise awareness of opportunities, strengthen relationships and help Kiwi firms do well in this growing market. It will play a key role in contributing to the government's goal to double the value of exports in 10 years. The establishment of the Business Council is an important step in strengthening trade and investment links between our 2 countries.
Supplementary. What was agreed in order to boost investment ties with Saudi Arabia?
Well, Mr. Speaker, with my Saudi counterpart, the Minister for Investment, we agreed to establish a cooperation framework between Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Investment and New Zealand's new investment agency, Invest New Zealand. Saudi Arabia is set to be the world's 6th largest economy by 2050, and New Zealand is well placed to attract Saudi investment into high growth sectors across the economy, including renewable energy, clean tech, advanced food production, wood processing, aquaculture, transportation and tourism. The government's making it easier for foreign investors to do business in New Zealand through streamlining investment settings and stronger commercial engagement.
Supplementary. What will the 5 new commercial partnerships mean for New Zealand?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the trade mission that was led, that we concluded this week in Riyadh, we saw high-quality New Zealand businesses sign 5 new commercial partnerships with Saudi companies. This is expected to generate more than $100 million in commercial value for New Zealand. These partnerships mark an important step in deepening New Zealand's trade relationship with Saudi Arabia and showcasing the strength and diversity of New Zealand's offerings of food and beverage, animal management, agri-tech, health and the creative industry sector. And I congratulate these businesses on their achievement, Mr. Speaker, achievements of which we'll see many more in the near future.
Very good. Question 3, Benjamin Doyle.
E te mangai, tēnā koe, ki te minita mō te mātauranga. Kei te whakapono ia ki āna kōwhiringa katoa me āna mahi katoa kia whai pūtanga pai mō ngā ākonga Māori.
The Honourable David Seymour.
On behalf of the Minister of Education, yes, absolutely, and particularly the outcomes around education, attendance. It's difficult to learn when you're at school, and some of us have the school reports and transcripts to prove it, but it's impossible if you're not there. If you take Term 1 data from 2022 to now, in the last 3 years we have seen a 20 percentage point increase in Māori school attendance. That is the biggest thing that will make a difference, more Māori at school.
He pātai tāpiri, I te reo Māori. He aha tāna whakamāramatanga I tāna ki atu. I don't want to be talking about the treaty. I want to be talking about reading, writing, maths, achievement. Kei te whai whakaro ia ki te hononga o te mahi whakamana I te tiriti o Waitangi, me ngā pūtanga a mātauranga mō ngā akonga Māori.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not getting any translation through this earpiece. Thank you.
There'll be none of those sort of comments. Thank you very much. It is a problem.
If the member could, I can try a different. I've got 2 here. I'll try the other one if that helps.
Try the other one for a minute.
Okay.
Would the translator please repeat the question?
Mr. Speaker, I do absolutely stand by that statement on behalf of the Minister of Education. It is simply a fact that if you don't have the basic literacy, the basic numeracy and the basic understanding of the world of science and history, then your ability to uphold anything, including te tiriti, is going to be greatly diminished, and that's why this government is focused on the simple idea of one teacher in one classroom with a knowledge-rich curriculum that is examined through proper examinations so that we are transferring knowledge from one generation to the next. And I hear the member opposite asking which knowledge. Well, the simple fact is that there are curricula being developed in Te Reo Māori and in English.
If the member's got a question, take a supplementary. Don't yell them across the House like that. The Honourable David Seymour. Oh, sorry, Benjamin Doyle.
He pātai tāpiri. He aha ia I kōwhiri ai kia whakakore I NCEA, aha koa ngā pōrahurahu o te runanga nui o ngā kura kaupapa Māori o Aotearoa me te kōrero tohu o kawa, ka whakataumaha ake tēnei kōwhiringa ki ngā akonga Māori.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, the government has decided to replace NCEA because we believe we can do better for all students, and that involves a more rigorous system of examination that ensures that students must learn the information in order to pass the test. Now, it is true that there is a range of perspective on the changes to NCEA, but this government utterly rejects the idea that somehow all Māori students are disadvantaged by a more rigorous examination system. That's the kind of thinking we need to get rid of.
He pātai tāpari. Kei te kūraruraru ia, Kei te kūraruraru ia I tā te budget 2025, whakaheke I te ahu mahi mātauranga I ngā FTE toru te kaumātahi, kia uawa ake te ako mō ngā akonga Māori, ki te kore, he aha e kore ai.
I'm sorry, Mr Speaker, I'm getting nothing there. Can we try again? I don't know what's going on.
Just, I'd ask the translator to say it again, if the Honourable David Seymour could tell us if he's getting that translation.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Ministry for Education, while there have been some changes in staffing across the system, overwhelmingly, this government is ensuring resources are focused on fixing what matters in education, and that is the quality of the curriculum, the amount of learning support, the quality of the assessment, the quality of the buildings and infrastructure. Those are the things the government is focusing its resources on to make a difference for all students.
He pātai tāpari. He aha te minita I kāti ai I ngā kaupapa kia aki, kia whakamana hoki I te maia me te matatauranga I te kōrero reo Māori, pērā ki te resource teacher Māori me te ahu o te reo Māori.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Education, it is absolutely true that we are committed to developing the resources and retaining the staff required to educate in both languages. And in fact, in the last budget, we have committed more resources to upskilling teachers in Te Reo Māori for exactly that purpose.
He pātai tāpari. Kei te whai whakaro ia, he tauira te whakaheke pūtea I te resource teacher Māori me te ahu o te reo Māori, I te whai kōwhiringa, e ai ki te toihau o te taurawhiri I te reo Māori ko Ahorangi Rawinia Higgins, tāna whakatūpato, reversing decades of progress in protecting and promoting te reo Māori, ki te kore, he aha e kore ai.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, the reason that I don't agree with that statement is that the government is reorganising its resources to make sure that we get the best outcomes for all students, and that includes significant investments in Māori language teaching and Māori language, Māori medium curriculum. We are doing the work to ensure that Māori language teaching is strengthened along with the entire system by removing a huge amount of wasteful spending that we discovered upon being elected into office.
Question number 4, the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Kia ora, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Economic Growth. Does she stand by her statements and actions?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr Speaker, in context, yes.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister, does she agree with Nicola Willis in 2022 when GDP shrunk by 0.2% that, quote, today's release of GDP data is more bad news for New Zealanders already struggling with the cost of living crisis, unquote? And if so, what would she say now that GDP figures published today show a 0.9% decline?
Mr Speaker, in answer to the first part of the question, yes. And I note that in the first 3 months of the year, the New Zealand economy grew by 0.8%, faster than Australia and twice what Treasury were forecasting.
Speaker, to the Minister, did her government's decision to cancel major infrastructure work, resulting in a 9.4% decline in construction for the year ended June 2025, contribute to the shrinking economy?
Mr Speaker, no. The government has increased the amount of capital investment going into infrastructure projects. What I can confirm, Mr Speaker, is that the fast-track regime, which has already ensured that the Auckland Port project will be underway before Christmas and has indicative approval for more than 1,000 houses to be built in Auckland, along with around a dozen other projects, its cancellation, which his party believes in, would stop major private construction projects.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister, what does it say about her performance when half the time she has been Minister, economic growth has been negative, just adding to the growing list of negative outcomes in New Zealand economy that highlight the reality of her growth agenda?
Well, Mr Speaker, it is the case that I cannot take responsibility for all the decisions made in the years leading up to my period as Minister for Finance. What I can take responsibility for is fixing it, and what I can also say quite confidently is that things would be a heck of a lot worse if you lot were in charge.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. Why does she blame international events for her 0.9% decline when for the same period Australia grew by 0.6%, Japan by 0.5% and the UK by 0.3%?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'd note that in that quarter there was also negative growth in Germany, Canada and other countries. I also do not recall that member congratulating me in the first quarter of this year when our rate of growth was many multiples more than Australia's. But I look forward to him being able to do so in future again.
Question number 5, Hana Rapeti Maipi Clark. Just wait till everyone is settled and quiet.
Tēnā rā koe te pika. Ki te minita o ngā take Māori, e whakapono ana ia ki ngā mahi a te kāwanatanga kia whakapū mautia te reo Māori.
Te maanga o te whare.
The Honourable Tamapota.
Ana.
Pātai taunaki, e whakai ana te minita ki ngā kōrero a te kai komihana mo te reo Māori, e mea ana, e raru ana te reo Māori, i ngā kauenga me ngā kaupapa here a tēnei kāwanatanga.
He te maanga o te whare, e mihi ka meha no te ngā kauiti rawa ki te kai komihana ki te toi hau o te taurāwhiri i te reo Māori. Me te mōhio hoki, ka nui ona kianga kōrero, aha ko kōwai te minita, aha ko kōwai te kāwanatanga.
Pātai taunaki, hei whakanui i te rima te kautau o te wiki o te reo Māori, e whakai ana te minita kia kāwhakina te kaupapa here a te kāwanatanga, e aukati ana, e tuaruatia nei rānei i te whakamahi o te reo Māori i roto i ngā tari kāwanatanga.
E te maanga o te whare, hei whakatairanga hoki i te wiki o te reo Māori, kua kite hoki au i ngā mahi nunui, roroa hoki, ngā tangata i hikoi atu ki te tai moana ki konei, tai atu ki ngā rangatahi i kōrero atu ki ngā manu kōrero, ka reo i kite i te memo o te rōpū reipā ki reira. Hoi anō, hei whaka utu hoki mo te kōrero nei, he wā ka piki, he wā ka heke. Engari, me kore tātou e pōhehe, mā te karauna tō tātou reo e whakarauora. Hoi anō, ma te ranga whānau, ma te ranga hapu, te ranga iwi, e whakarauora tō tātou reo. Ka riro hoki mā te kāwanatanga me te karauna, ia e whakatū wata.
Question number 6, Tim Costley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Associate Minister of Housing, what recent announcements have been made about improving social housing?
The Honourable Tamapota.
E te maanga o te whare. Last week, the Minister of Housing and I released an update on the allocation of the 1,500 community housing provider social houses funded in Budget 24 for delivery up to June 27, and the 550 social homes in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, funded in Budget 25. The Tuapapa Kurakainga, MHUD and community housing providers are getting on with approving, contracting and delivering these homes. We'll also publish a monthly dashboard summarising the delivery of these social houses funded from Budgets 24 and 25, as well as the Māori housing houses. Just on that, since coming into government, we have allocated and funded over 1,000 Māori housing places across papakainga, affordable rentals and other types of housing. This dashboard means that public, providers and members of the opposition can see progress being made.
To the Minister, what type of social homes are being built and delivered?
E te maanga o te whare. We are making sure we get the right type of houses built in the right places with the right supports for those in genuine need. Around half of the people currently on the social housing waitlist need a one-bedroom home, yet only 12% of the homes within Kāinga Ora are one-bedroom homes. And this is not good enough, so we're changing it up. We're changing how social homes are prioritised and procured, with a greater focus on data, evidence-driven needs analysis to deliver the social homes people need. And for the 2,000 places funded through Budgets 24 and 25, about 48% of the homes will be one bedroom, and around 42% will be two bedroom, and around 22% of them are expected to be accessible or accessible ready homes.
Well then, Mr Speaker, whereabouts are the social and Māori homes being built and delivered?
E te maanga o te whare. The Tuapapa Kurakainga MHUD has, for the first time ever, deliberately allocated houses on the basis of identified housing need across regions, for example, by looking at the housing deprivation data, emergency housing use and the social housing waitlist. This is the first time, actually, this has ever been done. But based on the pipeline data in Budgets 24 and 25, places across the set, including Māori housing, include places nearly 1,000 in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, over 500 in Te Moana Toitu Huatai, Bay of Plenty, 350 in a beautiful place called Waikato, 300 in Hetatonga, Hawke's Bay, great place, went to school there, Mr Speaker, 250 in Northland to Tai Tokerau, and nearly 100 in Wakatu, also known as Nelson. Let's build houses where they're most needed.
Mr Speaker, in addition to the over 2,000 social houses funded by the government, how many net new homes have been delivered?
E te maanga o te whare, since we came into government, tata ki te whitu mano whare, nearly 7,000 net new social homes have been delivered, and this includes over 5,400 net new homes delivered by Kāinga Ora and over 1,400 net new homes delivered by CHIPS. And these homes, of course, are additional to the over 2,000 Ruamano community housing provider social homes funded by this government so far, and I look forward to further announcements in this space at a beautiful location coming near you.
A point of order, the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Mr Speaker, we've traversed the issue of this government claiming they've built 7,000 houses in this House before, but the question was, of the 2,000 houses funded by this government, how many have they built? How on earth can the Minister claim to have built 7,000?
Well, it's not for me to judge whether or not the answer is correct or otherwise. Simply hasn't been addressed, and it has been addressed. A supplementary question. The Honourable... I don't think there's any more to say, but...
Well, the member is completely incorrect in what he said. My question was, in addition to the 2,000, how many net new homes were there? And the answer I heard was another 7,000 additionally.
Well, it's a repeated lie, but nevertheless, supplementary.
That should have been a correction that came from the Minister, but the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Thank you very much. To the Minister, how can he credibly stand in this House and claim to, quote, that there is, quote, progress being made, end quote, when the number of Kāinga Ora homes under his watch have reduced by 177?
Oh, shame.
E te maanga o te whare. I'm not aware of the fuzzy math that the member opposite has presented, but I'll gladly receive a question by way of written parliamentary questions.
A point of order. The Honourable Kira McAnulty.
The claim by the Minister of...
I'm sorry, start again.
Point of order, sir.
Yep.
The claim by the Minister that brought into question the integrity of the claim is at direct odds of claims by Kaingaora themselves. I think it is unparliamentary and certainly not good for order when ministers are able to claim that a member in this House is deliberately, well, I think the term was fuzzy, when his own department that he's referred to in the answers have stated this, just in news reports last night.
Go back to the comment I made in the House before, but if the member's got counter information, he can always table it in the House. Well, okay. Question 7, the Honourable Dr Aisha Verrill.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health and asks, does he stand by his statement regarding the bowel cancer screening age that we are committed to matching Australia? The critical restriction to enable this access to more colonoscopies, and if so, why?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Matusi.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On behalf of the Minister, yes, that is why this government expects Health New Zealand to continue work to expand access to colonoscopy and improve management and access for people of any age with bowel cancer symptoms through the rollout of the Fit for Symptomatic pathway.
Supplementary. Is it correct that Health New Zealand's colonoscopy capacity will be significantly freed up by those changes in 2026, enabling the screening age to be lowered to 45 years without additional funding, capacity or workforce?
What is correct, Mr Speaker, is that when we said we commit to Australia's age, they took 15 years and a stepped approach. And that's exactly what we're doing. So the first step goes down to 58, and the member wants to ask me a question why I'm asking the first question, but yes, we will have to increase capacity for the colonoscopy workforce.
Is the Minister aware that the changes he mentioned for fit testing in his response to my primary question would mean that so many colonoscopies would now no longer be needed that the government could screen down to the age of 45 without any more workforce, any more facilities or any more colonoscopy capacity?
Well, Mr Speaker, in answer to that question, I actually agree with Grant Robertson, the Labor Finance Minister in 2023, who said bowel screening age would need to be lowered in stages, and that's what we're doing.
Is the Minister saying that even though this opportunity is presenting itself, they are not going to take it? And if so, why?
No, what I'm saying at the moment, Mr Speaker, if you take one of the targets around urgent 14-day colonoscopies, the target is 90%. We are at 83% at the moment. That is the reality of the health system we inherited. That's why we're taking a step approach. There is a pressure on the colonoscopy workforce. It is a doctor-led workforce. That's why we're building capacity with nurse-led colonoscopies. We want to take a staged approach, and that's what this government's committed to.
Is the government saying now that the reason he's not willing to take this cost-free opportunity to expand screening to the same level as Australia, as per their election commitment, is because it'd rather use the capacity to address Health New Zealand's deficit?
Well, Mr Speaker, isn't it funny how everything seems so simple when you're in opposition? You'd wonder why it wasn't so simple when they were in government. This government is committed to lowering the age to 58. That is showing more evidence of saving lives than their policy of going down to 50 with certain population groups. We're committed for health need across all New Zealanders. We're committed to comparing ourselves to Australia, but as I've said in previous answers, that took Australia 15 years. That's why we're taking a stepped approach, and that's why even her colleague Grant Robertson, when he was Labor Minister, agreed with this government.
Question number 8, Rima Narkley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Energy and asks, what recent announcements has he made on the offshore renewable energy bill?
The Honourable Simon Watts.
This week we announced changes to the offshore renewable energy bill that will help unlock investment and accelerate New Zealand's transition to clean energy.
Great stuff.
These amendments enable the government to designate marine areas for offshore renewable projects while giving developers the certainty to invest while providing clarity for those exploring under the Crown Minerals Act. Mr. Speaker, this positions New Zealand to lead in offshore renewables and unlock high-value jobs.
Supplementary. Why has he made these changes?
Well, Mr. Speaker, offshore wind requires a significant upfront investment, and that is why we are establishing a clear regulatory regime through the Offshore Renewable Energy Bill. However, during the Select Committee process, offshore wind developers raised concerns about their projects coexisting with other activities, particularly seabed mining. This change is a clear signal that we're open for investment.
Supplementary. What will these changes mean for existing permit holders?
Well, Mr. Speaker, these changes are about balance. We want to be clear the way, and we want to clear the way for offshore wind, but we also need to protect the rights of existing permit holders. The government will take into account the impact on existing mining permit holders when determining these areas. And we expect that the offshore wind and mineral sectors will enter into constructive discussions on how their activities may coexist near each other.
Supplementary. What could offshore wind mean for New Zealand?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've been blown away with the opportunity that offshore wind presents. New Zealand has some of the world's greatest offshore wind potential. And while there is a lot of hot air coming from the other side of the House, offshore wind can be more powerful than more consistent than onshore wind, which is critical when so much of our electricity comes from intermittent sources. Offshore wind, Mr. Speaker, could bring jobs and abundant energy to grow our economy. This government has a strong commitment to double renewable energy by 2050, and offshore wind will play a critical part in that plan.
Question 9, Tiana Tuiono.
Tēnā koe e te manga o te whare te katoa aku nei pātai ke roto te reo Māori. He pātai tēnei ki te minita mō ngā take moana. E whakai ana ia ki tā te Environmental Defence Society e ki atu hei tā te Treaty o Waitangi, quote, obligation on the Crown to legislate for effective marine management, ki te kore ia e kore ai.
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Reo Māori, hoake kei ahau, me kaua te moana me wana pānga e tito hea ai. Aha ko nā raro i te treaty, nā runga rānei i te ngākau nui o te marea ki te moana.
He pātai tāpiri, hea te oranga ki roto i te whakaetina ara arotake, judicial review, mo te whakahaere i te ahu moana, hea te take kāre ia i whakariti te tai tūkanga kia rongo ki ngā kōrero o te katoa.
Speaker. Speaker. Preparing a strategy, approaches that reflect what the EDS is seeking to achieve, including a Special Oceans Act, will take time. It will never eventuate in the absence of priority given to economic development. These things take time.
He pātai tāpiri, ia hona kaupapa here kia chake anō te oranga o ngā popoto, ngā Maui Dolphins, ka whakaiti ia kia aukati te setnet me te troll fishing ki roto i o rātou kanga, ki te kore e whakai, hā te take perai.
Speaker.
Shane Jones.
Over the years, a host of restrictive measures have been put in place for this mythological creature, sadly known as Maui's dolphin. This has had a significant impact on the ability and the viability of the fisheries sector, but we should not devalue the work that has already taken place on the west coast of Te Aotearoa Maui to provide remedial measures for this declining population of mythical Hector's dolphins.
He pātai tāpiri, kei ai he maharahara he awawanga rānei ki te heki o te tautoko nā kamupene hiika nā i tana kaha aronga ki a rātou noiho, kai tū atu i te hapori whānui.
Speaker. Ko te koronga kei ahau, me pēhea rānei e whakaranea ai te oranga mai i ngā mau o te moana. E hara i te mea mo ngā kamupene hopu, hao, ika, anake nake, o tira ko ngā whānau, ko ngā hapu, me te iwi hoki i whiwhi ai i ngā pānga kia āhea i rātou, haere tonu ki te moana, hi, hao, ai, kia riro mai a rātou he oranga. Ko ia tēnā te hoakaitanga whakaharahara kei ahau.
Pātai tāpiri, ka whakaiti ia kia aukati te wāhi hika ki te Chatham Rise i te mea kei te tatanaro, te Orange Roughy ki reira, ka hihiatia rānei te whakapakaru ngā māra koao rānei.
Speaker, that fish referred to as the Orange Roughy is known in Māori as nihoroto.
Nihoroto, kia ora.
That area has been the subject of considerable public discussion, and any decisions made under law in the future governing the amount of fish that may be taken from that area will be announced in due course. But I would say to the member, less uncritical repetition of untested science, the best.
He pātai tāpiri, ka whai mahiri ia kia whakauru e tai atu anō panonitanga ture kia tauwharau ai i ona kaupapa here, mena i pēra ai kei te kōrero ki te Attorney General kei ngoi kore haere ngā tūkanga ture.
Speaker, I've been known to have multiple discussions with the Attorney General, and I am very conscious that there are a host of court cases pertaining to fisheries. Who knows what fresh bouts of litigation might take place, but any decisions made, plans introduced will be done in a way that strikes a balance, Mr. Speaker, between utilisation, but I will not be guilt-tripped about mythical creatures living off the west coast of Taranaki.
Question number 10, Honourable Penny Henare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister for Māori Development. E whakapaukaha ana tōna kāwanatanga ki te tautoko i te reo Māori ki Aotearoa nei.
The Honourable Tama Potaka.
E te māngai o te whare. Ana kei te whakapaukaha te kāwanatanga me te krauna ki te hāpai, ki te tautoko i te reo Māori. Hoi anō, he nui ngā manuka takotako. Kei mui te aroaro te kāwanatanga me te krauna, haunga ko ngā iwi, ngā marae, ngā hapu me ngā whānau.
Supplementary question. To the Minister, did he discuss with Minister Stanford the rationale why Te Reo Māori is important for children's learning before she removed it from children's reading resources? And if so, what was her response?
E te māngai o te whare. Ka nui hoki ngā kōrero i wainga nui a māua ko te minita mātauranga e pāna ki enei momotake. Me te mōhio hoki ka nui tana tautoko i te ahunga, i te anga whakamua i te reo Māori, ki ona puka motuhake, ara ko ngā decodable books i roto i te reo rangatira. E nui ngā kōrero e pāna ki ana mahi tikaro mai i te reo Māori i ngā puka reo ingarihi, engari kāre anō au kia kite i te kōrero o kawa e pāna ki ona mahi.
Pātai tāpiri. Supplementary to the Minister. Did he raise with Minister Stanford the concerns from Professor Rawinia Higgins, who said she had, quote, significant questions about the commitment to supporting Te Reo Māori, end quote, when the Minister cut the Te Kawa Matakura program?
Kareo i te, e te māngo te whare, kareo i te ata mōhio ki ngā whakaneke ngā katoe pāna ki tērā hotaka. Engari, ia te rua wiki, māua ko Minita Stanford e kōrero ana moene take ara tō tātou reo Māori me tōna tū hei pītau ira tū āpapa hoki mō tēnā nahi, mō tēnā nei, me te ao pōpō.
Supplementary question. To the Minister, will the government financially commit to the language and culture of rangatahi Māori and Tāmaki Makaurau by funding the $850,000 per year it costs to host the Māori stage at the ASB Polyfest, or will his government leave this important rangatahi kaupapa high and dry?
E te māngo o te whare. Kua kite huki te nui tautoko tēnei kāwanatanga me ngā kāwanatanga o mua i ngā mahi a te matatini ka riro anō ma tērā ohu a te matatini e nei momo kaupapa e whakatū watawata. Me te mōhio hoki, kaua e riro ma ia te maikuku.
The government cuts funding, cuts courses, cuts te reo from books, cuts te reo from official invitations, and then expects to reach 1 million speakers of te reo Māori in Aotearoa by 2040.
E te māngo o te whare. Ko kite hoki ngā kianga kōrero tō mātou ko te kāwanatanga manu pūtea, te whakatuara hoki te matatini, ko ia hoki tēti o ngā kanohi nui o te ao, e pāna ki tēnei iho pūmanawa ko tō tātou reo. E hari te mea, kāri i tapahi i e rā pūtea, engari i whakatuara i e rā pūtea tautoko i te matatini. Tai atu ki ngā kaupapa pērā i a te Māori Manaaki Trust, tai atu ki te whitu waru rau miliona tāra e whakapau kaha ana e nei kā wanatanga ki ngā kaupapa reo Māori, ki ngā kura reo Māori, me rao ngā hōtaka ki roto i ngā kura. Nā reira, kia āta haere, kia āta whakatūpatu hoki te kupu kōrero, ka maringi mai te araro te tangata e tapai ana tēnei kā wanatanga i ngā pūtea tautoko katoa.
Question 10, Dr. Vanessa Winnick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of the Associate Minister of Transport, what recent announcements has he made about the Ashburton Bridge?
The Honourable James Meagher.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this month I announced that the New Zealand Transport Agency has signed a contract with Fletcher's Construction to progress the detailed bridge design so that construction on the new Ashburton Bridge can kick off early next year. This is real progress towards the National Party's campaign promise to start construction of the bridge in our first term. We are a government that is delivering on our promise to the people of Mid-Canterbury.
Supplementary. Why is a second bridge needed?
Mr. Speaker, with about 24,000 vehicles using the current bridge daily, we need to ensure that people and goods can get up and down the South Island. Future-proofing this bridge is important to improving network resilience south to Otago in case of emergency events like flooding. The new bridge will be a vital connection for Tinwald to Ashburton and to relieve congestion on State Highway 1.
Supplementary. What are the next steps for the bridge?
Mr. Speaker, along with building it, we have to do the geotechnical investigations in and around the Ashburton River. They have now been completed and borehole samples are being analysed to better understand the ground conditions for building the bridge. The project team is progressing property purchases, statutory approvals and procurement. Design and construction contracts are expected to be signed at the end of the year. All this demonstrates the need for things like our fast-track approvals process to make sure that we can get things built in this country. I look forward to announcing the next steps once negotiations have been concluded, and we'll be pitching for the bridge to be named Brown's Bridge in honour of two of its strongest advocates.
Question number 12, Kamala Bellich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister for Workplace Relations and Safety, does she stand by her statement that this government is delivering for all workers? If so, why?
The
Speaker.
Honourable Brooke Van Velden.
Yes, I do stand by my statement in the context in which it was made. This government is delivering for all workers by reintroducing 90-day trials to ensure greater opportunities for those who may not otherwise have a shot at a job. We're removing the 30-day rule that binds new employees to collective agreements to ensure all workers have freedom of association. I could go on about all of the changes, but it is the last question on a Thursday, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary. How can she stand by her statement when the government is offering teachers an effective pay cut leading to strike action?
Mr. Speaker, I can't get involved in individual collective bargaining that's happening across the public sector.
A point of order, the Honourable Kira McAnulty.
The question was not asking the Minister to comment on that. It was asking her to defend her statement in light of the industrial action that is underway.
Well, just, yeah.
Well, this minister does not have responsibility for that negotiation. It puts her in a very difficult position.
That probably is a fair point. Camilla Bellich asked the question without losing one of the allocated questions.
Ask the same question again.
No,
different question.
Think about the exchange we just had.
Given that the Minister stands by her statement that the government is delivering for all workers, how is she delivering for nurses when they are complaining and taking action in order to achieve safer staffing?
Mr. Speaker, as I said before, I won't be getting involved in individual collective bargaining that's happening across the public sector, but what I would say is that this is a government that also takes into consideration patients who are also workers, and it is deeply disruptive for all workers who have surgeries. They might have things that they need to go to hospital for, which get disrupted, and they may have taken annual leave off for those procedures, and then they're cancelled last minute. And this is a government that takes all of that into account.
Supplementary. How can she stand by her statement when she has extinguished 33 pay equity claims and only one union is even considering filing new claims under her changed scheme?
Mr. Speaker, because of course we want our laws to do what they say they do, but I just suggest it's a very interesting circumstance that that member, after all of this time when she said that this pay equity system doesn't exist, it can't be used, there is actually a union using it.
How can she stand by her statement when doctors have no choice but to take industrial action in the face of an effective pay cut?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not responsible for doctors or the actions that they take. They are responsible for their own actions. This is a government that believes in personal responsibility.
Supplementary. How can she stand by her statement when thousands of workers will be gathering around New Zealand on Saturday to protest the government's actions against pay equity?
Mr. Speaker, like I've said, the equal pay system remains, pay equity remains. Some unions are looking to use it, and I would suggest that that member might wish to encourage others to use the system that has been established under the law.
That concludes oral questions. Members, I've received a letter from the Honourable Maribor Davidson seeking to debate under Standing Order 399 the findings of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory for the United Nations Human Rights Council. This is a particular case of recent occurrence. The situation in Gaza is one of great importance and concern to this Parliament and to New Zealanders generally. However, there is no ministerial or government responsibility for the findings of a United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry. That is a mandatory element of any urgent debate under Standing Order 3992B, and without it, I cannot grant the request for an urgent debate. This application is declined. I've also received a letter from the Honourable Dr. Aisha Birrell seeking to debate under Standing Order 399 a failure by the Associate Minister of Health to comply with the Public Record Act 2005. This is a particular case of recent occurrence involving the administrative responsibility of the government. The question is whether the matter is of sufficient importance for the House to warrant setting aside its normal business. Compliance with the Cabinet Manual by ministers and confidence in ministers are matters for the Prime Minister. I do not think the matter requires the immediate attention of the House. The application is declined. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Broadcasting, Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Amendment Bill, Committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Broadcast and Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Bill.
Members, the House is in committee on the Broadcasting Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Amendment Bill. We come first to Clause 1.
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair.
Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move that
Can I just ask for a beat for quiet in the House, please? The point of order is taken in silence.
I'd like to move that it be taken as one question.
Seeking leave for that purpose?
Seeking leave for us, thank you.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? Yes. Leave is declined. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to all members of the Committee of the Whole House. It's a pleasure to speak to the Broadcasting Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Amendment Bill. I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of the Minister particularly and the Government more generally, to everyone who has contributed to the debate and the discussion and the policy development so far, including the EDSI Select Committee, as they're known, along with those who made submissions on the bill, including members of the Fourth Estate, of course. As we know, the bill repeals Section 81 of the Broadcasting Act 1989. This is the provision that restricts advertising on broadcast TV on Sundays, Anzac Day mornings between 6 a.m. and noon, and on both TV and radio on Christmas Day, Good Friday and Easter Sunday. The laudable aim we start by recognising, which is of course to maintain a place for a diversity of less commercial programming, and we understand that that's feels important, but nevertheless in the modern era, of course, it's important to recognise that there are many different ways and in many different avenues, channels, so to speak, in which we consume media, and there is a strong argument to be made for alignment across those different platforms and media types. I'm pleased that the Select Committee recommended that the bill proceed with no amendments, and we, of course, will monitor the way that this plays out across those particular days of interest to many New Zealanders and look forward to the discussion in the House today.
As a matter of clarity, this is the debate on the title, so the question is that Clause 1 stand part. Ruben Davidson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it is good to have the opportunity to step through this bill clause by clause, albeit a very small bill. It's for a sector that faces some very large challenges, and so I think in considering Clause 1 and speaking to the title of the bill, it would be worth us getting a solid understanding in the House of the environment our local media sector is operating in. And this is relevant to both the advertising revenue available to our broadcasting, television and radio sector, but also to the wider sector and the extreme challenges that they have faced over the last 2 years. So I want to start by acknowledging that on the 28th of February 2024, the Warner Brothers Discovery Company proposed to close News Hub, one of only 2 linear television news broadcast services. And on the 7th of March 2024, Television New Zealand announced 68 job cuts, including some large flagship shows at our state broadcaster. These 2 events were described by both our Prime Minister and the then Minister for Broadcasting as unsettling, and they went on to say that neither had asked them for financial support, but that they were keen to do what they could to support both of those companies.
Sorry to interrupt the member. Can he bring his his questioning to the title.
Yes, absolutely.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Point of order,
Thank you, Madam Chair. The standing orders are quite clear on the title and commencement part of a committee stage, that the debate is more wide-ranging, given that there is no part under which to debate title and commencement. It seems appropriate to me that the clause for title is the most wide-ranging of the debates. Now, if you'll give us some guidance about another clause that you would prefer the more wide-ranging questions to the Minister about policy to be undertaken, and I'm sure we can accommodate that, but I do invite you to allow at least one speech from our spokesperson on broadcasting around the wide-ranging issues that people following along at home will be interested in.
I understand. I just want to pull it back. We're getting quite historic, but I do understand your point. So yes, but we are talking about the title.
Certainly. So to come back to the title and to relate the points that I was covering around the depth and volume of the job cuts that we've seen across the media sector as a result of the challenges that our broadcast media sector in New Zealand is facing. I'll move through those job losses a little faster, but we're talking about large numbers of people. We're talking about 68 people losing their job at TVNZ. We're talking about more than 200 people losing their job at Newshub. We're talking about ongoing job losses again at TVNZ, a further 50 jobs gone at the end of November, at the beginning of November in 2024. And at the same time as those jobs are being lost, and it's easy for us to talk about jobs and to forget that jobs is not just a word, jobs is people. So those are people who go home to their families no longer with an income or with a job in an industry that serves New Zealanders and serves democracy. What this shows us is that this repeal in and of itself is a very, very small and limited bill that has a very, very minor impact on the broadcasting sector, on the broadcasting industry, on the ability for us to create new jobs or protect existing jobs in our broadcasting and media sector. So the title and the title clause feels like it doesn't give adequate acknowledgement to the depth of the challenges and to the scale or small scale of the financial return that a shift like this will bring for the sector. The job losses, and I'm conscious of time, but the job losses have continued across the sector. It's important to note that the Minister who brought this bill and introduced it in December 2024, so we're coming up to 12 months ago, brought this bill forward, which we are now only at the Committee of the Whole House stage with, said that this would be part of immediate action for the sector, and at the rate that it's moving and with the impact that it will have for the industry, it really is a very, very small ripple in the pond as opposed to any kind of meaningful immediate action that will provide the kind of support that the sector needs. So I did want to signal that at the top, and given the scale of the crisis faced by the sector and the challenges around drawing revenue for the sector, my question was how much revenue does the Minister believe this will bring for the sector, and does the Minister think that given the very small revenue brought that the title is an appropriate title for the bill?
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The title is an appropriate title for the bill because it describes what the bill does.
Madam Chair.
Ricardo Menendez-March.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following some of these questions on the suitability of the title, which as Broadcasting Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Amendment Bill, I did want to flag the sort of broader policy intent of repealing advertising restrictions. And I wondered if the Minister would put it in the Hansard and on the record, what percentage of the revenue that this bill will bring by repealing advertising restrictions as per the title will make up a percentage of the amount of total revenue. So The reason why I'm asking this is that if the title, is being advertised to the public as, this will allow more advertising, which in and of itself will bring greater revenue, I'm interested to know, therefore, how much of this revenue will be in comparison to the total revenue that is being brought when it comes to advertisement. And
I'm sorry to interrupt the member.
Yeah.
This is a clause by clause debate.
I hear that.
This is not by part. So the clause is the title and it's quite narrow.
And as Arina Williams pointed out, this is also one of the areas that, according to the guidance that we're given, that we could ask broader questions. And if the title is going to be repeal of advertising
you're not hearing
restrictions...
me. This is a very narrow debate on a clause by clause debate. I refer the member to one. Excuse me, I'm speaking.
Yeah.
This is one. I'm referencing 1271 of the standing orders. 1272. It is very different from a part by part. We are just confined to the title.
Fair enough. Does the Minister agree that this title adequately represent the amount of insignificant revenue that will be brought by repealing these advertising restrictions? And does the Minister believe that perhaps a different title, such as insufficient revenue gathering, would have been more appropriate as the name of the bill? This relates to the earlier point I made in relationship to revenue gathering. I noted the comments from the Minister earlier in relationship to, this is a simple title that it simply describes what the bill does, but for everyday people, it's worthwhile noting that, if you just read repeal of advertising restrictions, you may be thinking, well, that we had this humongous level of advertising restrictions placed in our broadcasting sector, and that the public may be led to believe that the amount of revenue based on the title may be really significant. And so I did wonder whether the Minister, thought about perhaps a different type of title being more adequate in describing what the bill actually does, because the title, in my view, does not adequately describe what the bill actually does, which is gathering a very insignificant amount of revenue at a time where the broadcasting sector is really, really struggling. Did the Minister seek any other options for titles for this bill? We talked a lot about using plain language in legislation to support members of the public engage with our legislative processes, and so I did wonder whether he thought that different use of language would have been better appropriate. Did he at any point seek advice on a different name for the bill? And if not, why not?
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Peake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The content of this very short bill is to repeal advertising restrictions. It's appropriate, therefore, that its title is Repeal of Advertising Restrictions. Anything more or less than that would be remiss on the part of the Minister, and I'm pleased that he has gone for a very descriptive, straightforward title.
Tom Rutherford.
I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National. 49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima nā pōti whakahē.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima nā pōti whakahē.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 54. The question is agreed to. Point of order, then Bennett.
I understand you made it very clear at the start around the narrowness of the title. It does seem hard for us on opposition side to... I've only had one call from, and only from our spokesperson, not from other members of the committee, of the select committee, and also having only two from the opposition side. I just really want you to consider that in terms of there was at least 4 people I saw seeking the call, and to shut it down so quickly didn't seem fair on our side.
I'm sorry that you felt that way. I have made.
Chair?
I haven't finished speaking yet. I did make it clear on purpose. Usually, on a clause by clause, when you're talking about title, there is latitude given for a summary, a summation, because the title clause is usually debated at the end. So there is consideration given to widening the scope. This is up at the front, so it narrows it considerably. Nobody spoke to an amendment paper, and so I've made the call. There was very little room for manoeuvring. The Minister had made his point extremely clear that the narrow title reflected the bill, and there was clearly going to be no movement from that. So we are moving on now to...
Speaking to the point of order?
Speaking to the point of order?
I mean, the clarity I seek is you're unsure of... There were 2 calls made. Yes, narrow, and yes, we understand it wasn't clause by clause. But there were contributions that were sitting here waiting that we'll never know now of what those questions were or what the contribution could have been into this specific debate. Chair?
Excuse me? Yes. Point of order, Glenn Bennett.
Just in terms of the order of the House, another point I'd like to make is calling out during, making noise during the vote. I understand that is against the rules. And the fact that the Chief Whip did do that of the government, I thought that was unhelpful. And as well as taking points of order and silence is another part of that, which I'd ask you to consider to make sure that they are heard in silence, please.
I take that point on board. Thank you. We still have a range of questions to put to the House. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with failed promise for immediate action, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. The question is that Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1 replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with advertising on Sundays and public holidays be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote is called for Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumā whā e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima ngā poti whaka ai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
The ayes are 49, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with Melissa Lee was gone by now, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with $6 million solution to a $100 million problem, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with Get to Work Goldsmith, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with not so immediate action, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with Merry Christmas, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. Ruben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with Willie Jackson solved this problem 2 years ago, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 1, replacing repeal of advertising restrictions with job losses aren't slowing down, is ruled out of order as not being an objective description of the bill. The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Party vote.
A party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kau mā whā e whakahe.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kau mā rima nā pōti whakahe.
Act New
11
Zealand.
in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima nā pōti whakahe.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 54. The question is agreed to. Members, we now come to Clause 2. This is the debate on commencement. The question is that Clause 2 stand part.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Aaron Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is my first opportunity to take a call on this bill. I hope you'll allow me, Madam Chair, to take the committee through my amendments to this part, Clause 2, because the House Office are in the process of processing my amendments to this and haven't yet been able to put them on the table. The reason for a number of amendments to particularly the time of royal assent, is that this is a bill which is important to the government's program for the broadcasting industry. It is one that relates quite closely to funding for certain programs and certain actors within it, and so the timing is important. We believe this should happen before Christmas. But it is actually a bill which amends a number of specific dates. And I will have more questions for the Minister and the Chair on the specific dates, and particularly Christmas Day and Easter dates, because this is a very different debate to what was the context of those amendments in 1993 to the Broadcasting Act. Those amendments were giving effect to those special dates of Christmas and Easter because they were seen as days where advertising was inappropriate. And so I'll be asking him whether there are other safeguards that are appropriate for the sorts of advertising that are shown on those days. But Madam Chair, if you'll allow me to take the committee through what I am proposing here for the date of royal assent. I don't think the on the day after royal assent is the most appropriate date. I think it would be appropriate to choose one of the important days also in the range of Christian holidays to assent to this bill and for it to commence, given that, you know, in the context of the 1993 changes, there was special consideration given for those days. So choosing from a range of 25 amendments that I have proposed around the days between now and Christmas that would appropriately recognise those traditions that were being recognised in the changes in 1993 and 2002, I think would be the most appropriate. I'm going to very quickly sign these amendments for the Minister so that he can have a look at them to consider whether it would be appropriate for this bill to come into effect on one of those days. For instance, just to give him a taste, I have in Clause 2 delete the words on the day after royal assent with replace it on Gaudete Sunday 2025, or if it is his preference, in Clause 2 delete the words on the day after royal assent and replace it on All Saints Day 2025. Those would both be appropriate days and would recognise the tradition in which we are wiping away with this amendment. Labor does support this bill and will be voting for this part, but it's important that we recognise the tradition which is being wiped away here, Madam Chair. It is useful for everyone in this House to appreciate why those days were singled out for advertising restrictions. And given that this bill is called a repeal of advertising restrictions bill, but it does in fact take away only the advertising restrictions which were on those Christian holidays and Anzac Day, and does not repeal any other advertising restrictions which are still in law, it's quite useful for us to understand not only what we are doing here, but the historical context which we are effectively erasing here by taking away those two particular dates, and that is why I have made some other suggestions, like in clause 2, delete the words on the day after royal assent and replace it with on the feast of St Thomas the Apostle 2025. I would suggest to the Minister that he could also consider in clause 2, delete the words on the day after royal assent and replace it with on the feast of St John of the Cross 2025. It would also be useful for the Minister to consider my amendment in clause 2, delete the words on the day after royal assent and replace it with on the feast of St Lucy 2025. I've also suggested the feast day of St Nicholas 2025. The Minister might like to enlighten the House about which of those are his favoured saints. I have also made some amendments suggesting various Sundays in Advent. Though this is not my area of expertise, I was raised both Anglican and in Te Hāhi Rangatu, which does not have special celebrations of many of these feast days. I also did celebrate in my youth the Mondays and Sundays of Advent, and so I have suggested each of the Mondays and Sundays of Advent, and the Minister might like to clarify the House which of the Sundays in Advent is his favourite.
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Peake.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I commend the member for her thoroughness. It's clear, however, that from the government point of view, and as members opposite have actually pointed out, this is a well-signalled move. It's important to bring it in as soon as reasonably possible. We're not talking about doing this on Christmas Eve or on Maundy Thursday or on the 24th of April. There is sufficient time for arrangements to be made such that advertising will be restricted in the way that the bill sets out. And I note that there are other dates of significance in the Christian calendar, but also in various other cultural and ethnic significance to New Zealanders from throughout the year. But to the extent that those already allow advertising, there is no need for the restrictions on those to be repealed by this bill. So I commend her breadth of knowledge, but I don't think it's particularly helpful, and certainly the government won't be entertaining any changes to that, which is put forward, namely to bring into the bill as soon as reasonably possible, namely the day after royal assent.
Madam
Ruben Davidson.
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to take a further call on this bill, and particularly to take a call at this point where we're talking about Clause 2, and we're talking about the date of royal assent as the potential timeframe for the bill to come into effect. And we know what the impacts of that will be. And no, we don't. I would like to thank my colleague, St Arara, for taking us through a number of potential religious holidays that could be observed, or through the action of a bill such as this, no longer observed by the removal of the restrictions or the repeal of the part of the Broadcasting Act. The consideration that I would like to have answered from the Minister, or the answer I would like to hear from the Minister, is around the potential timing of the assent of the bill, given the slow speed with which the bill has moved through the House so far, and given that the religious holidays and public holidays that are observed by the existing Broadcasting Act in the section proposed to be repealed, is that those public holidays, and there are a number not observed in the Act, many of which were detailed by my fellow MP here, but the ones that are covered in the Act cluster. So they all seem to happen within a single quarter of the year. And for a government that's very focused on specific quarters and targets, for example, we see that we would have Christmas Day and Easter, Good Friday and Easter Monday would all fall in more or less into a single quarter of the end of 2025 and the commencement of 2026. So if the assent was to miss the ability to be implemented prior to that quarter in the next 12 months from now, then the net benefit of the projected very optimistic $6 million that this change claims to return to the industry would in fact be significantly eroded, because 3 of the 5 or 4 of the 5 potential public holidays would be missed altogether. So the question really is around the minister's, whether the minister has given that any consideration, whether the minister has a sense of what the specific revenue value of each of those days is, whether there's much of a variance there, and the impact that royal assent would have on that, so that the bold claim of a $6 million return in new revenue to the industry can actually be calculated far more accurately based on what we can anticipate seeing being returned through new ad spend on broadcast radio and linear television broadcast on the basis of royal assent falling at a specific point over the next 12 months, which is certainly when I think everybody would like to see this bill coming into effect. So it's really a question around the potential for the minister to be able to move the balance of this bill in its final stages through the House so that the revenue can be returned to the industry that, as I outlined in my initial speech, desperately needs income now to support the people who keep it working. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Jenny Marcroft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a very brief contribution on this clause, and I think perhaps while various members might be invoking saints and speaking about religious days, I think it's really important that perhaps we should have commenced our procedures this afternoon with a prayer to St Clare of Assisi, the patron saint of television and broadcasting. Madam Chair, I'd just like to highlight a point from our broadcasters who this bill will affect, is that as soon as possible for this bill to be put through the House, giving them time so that, if possible, they are able to get advertising booked in time for this Christmas. That is what they are hoping for. So I just wanted to pass that on for the Minister in the seat, and that is something they wish, that there is not a long and protracted period of time in the House today and for the third reading that we just get this bill done.
Madam Chair, and it's interesting to listen to the different arguments coming from around the House, which is always part of the committee stage. It's to actually thrash it out and try to understand and to make it better if it needs to be made better, or if it's a lemon, then it will always be a lemon. But Madam Chair, the Minister made it brought into the debate, talked about Maundy Thursday, which is a significant day, and I think we need to sort of consider the fact of coming of that day and where it fits in terms of the royal assent and what it could be. And I think the significance of Maundy Thursday, for those who don't know, that is the Thursday that leads into Easter, and it has several names. Maundy Thursday can also be Holy Thursday, and it's something we respect and we consider. And would that be a significant date? Because as we know in the Christian calendar, we look at when the Act comes into force, and at Easter time it is a significant time of the rebirth and new things coming. So maybe that's something to consider. But Madam Chair, the Minister did talk about Maundy Thursday, and it's also can be known as Holy Thursday, but also can be known as the Thursday of Mysteries. The Thursday of Mysteries, and I thought that's maybe quite relevant that we consider in this part 2 of the commencement, that maybe the Act would have royal assent on the day of mystery. And of course we all know, those who do attend church occasionally or during Easter, or those who don't know, let me explain that on Maundy Thursday or the Thursday of Mysteries, that evening is an event called the Service of the Shadows. When slowly the church, the candles are extinguished and it turns into darkness. And Madam Chair, I thought that would be quite appropriate for this bill, that maybe the day of royal assent is Maundy Thursday, and as the lights go out, the lights fade and the mystery and the darkness comes, it's the darkness of the future of the broadcasting industry and what it looks like. So Madam Chair, I ask the Minister to consider the fact that maybe Maundy Thursday would be the day of royal assent because it is mysterious and the darkness of the future of broadcasting is upon us.
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And at the risk of encouraging the member along the Easter theme, I do rise again to simply point out, if today is the day of mystery, because I don't understand what the member's talking about, because he's contradicting his own colleague around the fact that while his colleague is talking about bringing in this as soon as possible to ensure that we include the weight of Christmas and those first quarter occasions, nevertheless, if we were to delay until some other date, as significant as it may be, then that would defeat the purpose. So I think for all these reasons, as I started by saying, the sooner that we can bring this into effect, namely in including with acknowledgement of the point made by Jenny Marcroft, the day after royal assent is literally the fastest that we can do that.
Dr Vanessa Wienink. I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
Tori tekau mā whā e whakahe.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima na poti whakahe.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakahe.
Members, the ayes are 68, the noes are 54. The question is agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on the Monday prior to the first sitting of the House of Representatives in 2026, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Tori tekau mā whā e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with 3 weeks and 1 day after royal assent, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Tori tekau mā whā e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on a date appointed by the Minister for Media and Communications, is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on the day after publication in the Gazette, is ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with 3 months following royal assent, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote called for, I think, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Tori tekau mā whā e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima na poti whakaai.
New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on the first sitting day of the House of Representatives following royal assent, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumawha e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on the first anniversary of the date on which it receives royal assent, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. The party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumawha e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with 90 days after royal assent, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumawha e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with 14 days prior to the next Christmas public holiday following royal assent, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumawha e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on New Year's Day 2026, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumawha e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima na poti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Clause 2, replacing on the day after royal assent with on a date appointed by the Governor-General by order in council, be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote's called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
Toru te kaumawha e whakai.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumā rima na poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E rima nā pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that clause 2 stand part. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. We now come... I've already finished the vote. I've moved on. We now come to clause 3. Clause 3 is the debate on the Principal Act. The question is that clause 3 stand part.
Madam Chair.
Point of order, Celia Wade-Brown.
I said no and then party vote immediately. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you call the vote. I would like to make a request to record our vote against that part. Thank you.
You're seeking leave for that?
Yes, please.
Leave is sought for that purpose? There seems to be any objection? Yes. Move on to clause 3. This is the debate on the Principal Act. The question is that clause 3 stand part.
Madam Chair.
Ruben Davidson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a privilege to take a further call, and as we step into the third part, to be able to fully examine the 7 words that comprise that part. And that's part of the issue with that part, is that the entire repeal that we're dealing with here has 73 new words, but also what it does is it repeals an act from 1989, which is only 36. Welcome to take a call, sir. 36 years ago. So before the member who corrected me was probably even born. But that just gives you an idea of how old the bill is and how much has changed since. And so I think it's worth looking at the fact that it's a rare occasion then one of the jibes from the other side is actually funny, but it's worth looking at some of the other tools that are in the toolbox here, because what we're dealing with here is an act that is very old, but there are a number of other ideas that I think, as we look at how we word the amendment, we really ought to look at some of those other ideas that are in the mix there, and that are opportunities for the Minister to take the immediate action promised for the industry to actually help with some of the very real and very immediate challenges they face. And one of those is the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill, which is a great piece of legislation that was sitting there ready to go and was, for a time, worked on by the Minister and by Select Committee, but has unfortunately, progress has slowed significantly or potentially entirely on the important work happening there, which means that we are relying on this Act, the Broadcasting Act 1989, which is the Act referred to in this third part. The other ideas that are available for the Minister at any time, and he's got my number, he's welcome to call me and talk about how we can move these at pace into law for the protection and enhancement of local media. One of those is a members' bill, which is a levy for streamers. So what that would actually do is ensure that our international streaming platforms, who provide some amazing content and draw a lot of eyeballs locally and gather a lot of revenue locally, are compelled to pay a small percentage of their profits, of their income, back into the New Zealand market so that that can be invested in local content, the kind of local content that would be governed by the Broadcasting Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Amendment Bill. So I think that would be something that, a very simple step that the Minister could take. I've already drafted the bill for him. All he needs to do is have a chat and we can make that happen. And the other one, which also I have in the biscuit tin at the moment, is the Online Safety Bill. And that one's a really good bill because we know so many people are getting their media content from online platforms now. And what this bill does is it makes sure that those online spaces are safe for everybody. We know we have a number of vulnerable communities and that ultimately we're all vulnerable in those online spaces and platforms, and that bill would make sure that those spaces are much safer for everybody. So those are some of the tools sitting there in the toolbox or in the biscuit tin or at the end of the phone that, should the Minister want to at any stage take the immediate action he's promised, that immediate action could be as simple as a cup of tea, and we could get those agreed to and in the House here, and we could all continue to work as constructively together as we have today on moving the solutions forward through the sharing of ideas and the sharing of amendments. Now, the amendment that I wanted to share here is on Clause 3, the Principal Act, that says this Act amends the Broadcasting Act 1989. The flaw here is that there is then a full stop. And I think that that should really go on to say by and then explain exactly what it is intending to do in that clause. So I think there's a real missed opportunity here, and perhaps the Minister was trying to really work within an under 100-word limit for the repeal, but he does have 17 spare words to play with. You could fit that in. Is there any reason the Minister has chosen not to do that at this point of the bill?
Madam Chair.
Steve Abel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the chance to take a call on this. We're talking about the Principal Act, which amends the Broadcasting Act 1989, and the form of that amendment, of course, is the repeal of Section 81, which we will discuss at length in the next section. But for us to understand the consequence of the amendment, it's important to understand the purpose for there being an amendment. And the purpose of that amendment is, of course, to take away those restrictions that exist on advertising on Christmas Day, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and Anzac morning. Before the debate was, I think, somewhat hurriedly shut down on the title, I was going to suggest, Madam Chair, because there has been some humour expressed around religious holidays, around the Minister himself referring to rising again. A comment that was made in the first debate on this bill was that, is there nothing sacred, Madam Chair? Are there no days and no hours in our days when it is not appropriate for us to have no advertising? Your birthday. Thank you. I would be happy to not have advertising on my birthday, Mr. McCullum. But we may make light of the significance of these religious days, those of the members who are not Christian, for example, but in the case of Good Friday and Easter Sunday, these are among the holiest days for people of the Christian faith. And these are days when the absence of commercial intrusion is something that we should think it is appropriate to preserve. Christmas Day, a day when many of us should be spending time with our families, not being sold more commercial rubbish that we've already spent most of the last 3 or 4 weeks acquiring, as we are imposed upon to do by our cultural expectations. And Anzac Day, that day when we commemorate those people who died in some pretty bloody miserable wars. And this specifically would lift the restriction between 6 a.m. and midday on Anzac Day. And the start of that is when many people would be at dawn ceremonies. So my suggestion for the bill, and I realise we've passed that debate, but it gives some sense of the Green Party view on this bill, is that it should be called the Broadcasting Nothing is Sacred Amendment Bill, or Advertising Everywhere Amendment Bill. And we propose that this Principal Act that amends the Broadcasting Act 1989 should be deleted by way of making the determination that there should be no amendment to the Broadcasting Act 1989, because the bit that's going to be amended is Section 81, which is appropriate and fitting that it keeps in place a restriction on advertising on those very few remaining days in which we are not intruded upon by commercial enterprises trying to sell us stuff, most of which we don't need. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just responding to the questions posed by the last two members, I'm sympathetic to the point that Mr Abel makes in general terms about whether we preserve something as sacred. I suppose as legislators for all of New Zealand, we do need to consider if there are anomalies such that we're recognising some days as being specially significant, such that advertising is restricted and not others. We've canvassed briefly the fact that there are days of significance that are beyond those recorded in this, and I'm pleased that the member rightly mentions Anzac Day as being one of the important days to many New Zealanders, I hope all New Zealanders in fact. But of course it's the case that unless we were to regard it as sacred from the point of view of restricting advertising every single day that is important to some New Zealand or other, we will simply not have any advertising at all, and it might be that the member would be pleased to have that. I wouldn't be displeased myself, speaking personally, but I think it's not realistic to expect our media to operate under those restrictions, including in the context of the point that I made earlier, which is that there are other places that advertising is able to continue other than these traditional broadcast media in which there aren't restrictions. So it's a matter of fairness and consistency across the board. I would certainly endorse his comment that we have more useful ways of spending such special days than watching advertising, but my personal views on that don't come into the matter in terms of a matter of public policy for the reasons I've said. As for Mr Reuben Davidson's point, he's outlined a number of policy proposals that he's keen for the Minister to consider. I'm sure that the Minister for Broadcasting will give those the attention they deserve, but I don't think within the scope of this bill it would be possible to adopt them, so I'm sure that he's not proposing that actually be the case. And in terms of whether there's a missed opportunity in the brevity of Clause 3, it's always the case that the Principal Act clause simply states that this Act amends name of parent legislation, so to speak, so I don't intend to entertain on behalf of government, or entertain at all really, but entertain on behalf of government any changes to that.
Aruna Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for an opportunity to take a Clause 3 call. It's helpful that the Minister has, in this debate, recognised, I guess, the principles at play here, and though Labor is supporting this, we have a number of questions around, those days which are important to New Zealanders and also important to our history and traditions that are recognised in law in a dwindling number of our laws, and this is one of them. And so those are my questions about Clause 3. Is it not important for the Minister to recognise that in this clause, when we are calling the bill advertising restrictions, and then we're saying in Clause 3 that what's being amended is the Broadcasting Act with no explanation there, and then in the next clause it's simply a repeal. Does it not look to your average reader or user of the legislation that what is being repealed here is advertising restrictions, when in fact what is being repealed is the advertising restrictions on Sundays, Anzac Days, Easter and Christmas? Because those days are no longer days that this House considers to be important enough to have specific restrictions at those times. So there is something a little bit misleading about the simple word amends there. Maybe not misleading, maybe a faithful characterisation of that would be very bald way of what is stating here what is a pretty charged up debate really about the principles and values that are at play in a change like this. And I'm not taking either side of that debate. I'm simply saying that this is a very different context to what it was in 1993 when those in this House would have demanded, many in this House would have demanded a conscience vote on this issue. I understand there is one party in this House taking a conscience issue for exactly this reason. And so it is useful for us to at least traverse in the committee stage what the values are and why we think they are no longer part of a lengthy and fraught debate in this House. And so to Clause 3, I have a number of amendments that the Minister might consider, though it is unusual for this clause to include an explanation about further changing the word amends. Because if amends was to say something like, instead of the word amends, removes restrictions on advertising during Sundays, Anzac Day and Christmas Inn, that would be clear about what was being changed in the Broadcasting Act. Because when we think about the various restrictions about advertising in that Act, There are many. Most are given effect by secondary legislation or by codes. There is the Advertising Standards Authority codes, for example, which lay out a number of grounds about the kinds of advertising and when it is restricted and to who. And those are important considerations which, at the primary legislation level, it was for a long time prohibited grounds to advertise on a Sunday morning when people would presumably be at church or observing their faith in their homes. Now there are none. So let's just be clear what we're saying there. Now there aren't restrictions about whether you can, say, advertise alcohol, or you can advertise gambling, or you can advertise to children, or you can advertise debt products to vulnerable people. Though only the normal restrictions that secondary legislation apply, we've gone from a situation where we thought any advertising on a Sunday morning was not fine, to a situation where all of that advertising on a Sunday morning is fine. So it would be very useful if we said that quite clearly in Clause 3, with an amendment like amend Clause 3 by deleting the words amends and replacing it with dismantles long-standing limits on Christian holiday advertising in. Or amend Clause 3 by deleting the words amends and replacing it with opens the door to commercial breaks on sacred days in. Those amendments are not frivolous amendments. They are amendments which say clearly what this legislation is doing, and the Labor Party is supporting it. We are supporting that because we have made a judgment call about what the values at play here are and what the principles are, but we are clear about that. It's not fair to draft legislation which takes away the recognition of important days to a number of people and to what are, frankly, semi-constitutional in nature days which everyone understands and are a framework of New Zealand's legal system because they are well understood phrases in our law, that they would be taken away with absolutely no mention in the primary amendment bill of what is in fact happening here.
Madam Chair.
The Honourable Chris Peake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not appropriate for that type of provision to go into the explanations the member is seeking. If she wants a statement on the general policy, there's a general policy statement. If she wants a note as to explanation, there's an explanatory note. I take her point about thrashing out the issues and the underlying philosophical points, and I note that she and I could just about reach out and touch the Gallipoli wreath here. So in relation to Anzac Day, for example, New Zealanders have choices as to whether they sit down and watch linear broadcast television on that morning or might, for example, attend Anzac Day services. It's not the same thing as to say that there is no significance to these dates and therefore that's the reason we're removing it. It's a matter of fairness, it's a matter of consistency, and it's a matter of updating our legislation for all the reasons that have been discussed today, but also in the Select Committee.
Tom Rutherford.
I move that debate on this question now close.
We are almost there. Point of order, Kushla Tangari Menu.
Reo Māori. Reo Māori. Tēnā koe e te manga o te whare. He maha ngā taima kua tūau ki te whai wāhi ki te kōrero. Kei te mōhio mātou katoa. Ko tētahi āhuatanga motuhake o te ao pāpāho o roto o Aotearoa nei, ko te reo Māori me ngā tikanga Māori. Ka rea anō tētahi o roto o te whare nei e whai wāhi ki te tuku pātai ki te minita e pāna ki ngā whakaaro Māori. Nā reira, ko taku pātai atu kia koe, kia whai wāhi awau ki te tuku pātai ki te minita.
I'll have to ask you to say that because the earpieces aren't working, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just raising the fact that several times I've stood to seek a call because we all know that part of the uniqueness of broadcasting in New Zealand is the Māori language.
The point of order is?
The point of order is that no one who's spoken yet has had the opportunity to seek a call specifically regarding to considerations of the Māori language and Māori worldview with regard to this bill.
So seek a call.
Madam Chair.
Push the tongue.
Tēnā wātu koe e te māngai o te whare. Ka kōrero Māori au, Madam Chair. Tēnā tātou. Tēnei hoki te mihi atu kia koe e te minita e kōrero mō tō aranga ake anō. Nā te mea, tērā pea a tērā kōwhiringa pōti kāre tō pāti e ara anō. Hoi anō rā, ko kōrero mātou mo te tau I puta mai tēnei pere ara te tau kotahi mano e iwa rau waru te kau mā iwa. Ko au tētahi I ora I aua tau. Nā reira, kei te maumahara tonu au I te wā kāre enei mea, enei rawa I hangaia, mena I pērangi koe ki te mā taki pauaka whakāta, me noho tō whero I mua I te pauaka, kia mā taki koe I tāu e hia ai. Ko ngā pānui hoko tētahi āhuatanga o taua wā. Hoi anō rā, ko taku wai Māori e hoki ki te mahi I roto I te ao pāpāho. I mahi au I runga I te hōtaka e kia nei a marae. Nā reira, kei te tino mōhio au ki te wāriu o ngā hōtaka Māori. Hoi anō rā, e te māngau te whare, e te minita hoki. I a koutou e rapa ngia I etahi I ngā whakaro kia tini hia tēnei kaupapa, ara te pere e pāna ki ngā pānui hoko I roto o te ao pāpāho, I pēhea koutou, I kōrero tahi koutou me ngā hunga pāpāho Māori, koera taku pātai tuatahi, I kōrero tahi koutou me ngā hunga pāpāho Māori. Ki tua atu I tērā, kua rongo mātou I ngā kōrero e pāna ki ngā rangi tapu. Ko au anō tērā I tipu ake au I roto I te hāhi mihinare. Nā reira kei te mārama pai au ki ngā āwangawanga a te hunga e haere ana ki te hāhi. Nā reira, ko tētahi atu pātai e te manga o te whare. Kua kōrero tahi te minita te kōmiti whakahaere rānei ki ngā hāhi. Kua kōrero I whai wāhi ngā hāhi ki te kōrero tahi me te minita ki te kōmiti kōwhiria rānei. Te pērā I te hāhi mihinare, pēnā I te hāhi katorika, ngā hāhi katoa. Ko te kei te kei mai tērā taho te whānau, kāre te hāhi e whai wāhi ki tēnei kaupapa. Ka pāpāho enei pānui hoko, tērā pēr, ka pānui rātou I ngā pānui hoko mo te waipiro I runga I ngā rangitapu. Koera te take e whai wāhi tēnei kaupapa ki ngā hāhi, kia tika rā koe. Hoi anō rā, ki ka haere tonu. Haha? Kāre he kōrero o te minita I tēnei wā. Tori tō waha e hoa. Hoi anō rā, ka haere tonu ki tētahi atu rangi, whakahirahira ro atu, e hara mō te hunga Māori anake mō Aotearoa whānui. Ara te rangi whakamaumahara I o mātou hoia. I tēnei rā, I roto o tiki ki ana te whare I te tangata. Ka hoki mai ngā whanaunga ki te wā kāinga, ki te maumahara I a rātou kua wehe atu. Rātou I haere ki te whawhai mō mātou katoa o roto o tēnei whare, o tira mō Aotearoa whānui. Wai Māori e mātou e tai ana a tinana rā. Engari, ko etahi, ko krauatia, ko kuiatia, ko tā rātou he noho ki te kāinga mā taki ai. Kāre rātou e pīrangi ki te mātaki I ngā pānui hoko, kei te pīrangi rātou ki te mātaki I te karakia e haere ana me ngā kōrero o rātou kua wehe atu. Hoi anō rā, ko te pātai. I kōrero koutou ki te hunga e kia nei ko te RSA, Return Services Association, I kōrero rānei koutou ki ngā hoia. Ngā hoia e ora tonu ana, ngā hoia e whawhai tonu ana mō mātou katoa. Nā reira, ahakoa te whakahihi o etahi o tērā whare, kāre rātou e pērangi ki te whakarongo I ngā āwangawanga a te hunga Māori, I ngā āwangawanga a ngā hāhi, me te āwangawanga o ngā hoia, me ngā whānau e manaki nei I ngā hoia, koera aku pātai e tēnei te mihi atu ki te minita I whakarongo mai.
Madam Chair.
Before I take the next call, can I just say that the details in the members' contribution were probably best dealt with in clause 4. However, given the difficulties we were having, I let the member continue. Did the minister want to address?
Madam Chair.
I'll call the Honourable Chris Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to address briefly the points helpfully raised by the member, starting with the final one. The Minister for Broadcasting interacted with a wide range of stakeholders, and I can answer the question on my own behalf wearing a different hat, so to speak, as Minister for Veterans. I was and remain interested in the views of ex-service personnel in terms of the restrictions being lifted from Anzac Day. However, there's a diversity of views among the veteran population, just as there are, and I see my colleague and friend Dr. Vanessa Wienick nodding, and she's one herself, of course. It's impossible to characterise a general view except to say that the issues that we've been canvassing as a committee now for some time in terms of the modern technological advances and so on, are broadly distributed in that veteran community as well. As for those within the Māori world and also various Christian denominations, there was a thorough select committee process at which various views were canvassed, including that I understand from the report that there was consultation, whakaata Māori, Te Mangai Paho and Te Puni Kokiri, among others, who pointed out a number of different things, didn't indicate that there was any sense of inconsistency with the Treaty of Waitangi, or Te Tere o Waitangi, and also the point was highlighted that Māori audiences overall represented a younger demographic on average than other viewers, and it's increasingly there's an age dimension in the direction of younger New Zealanders accessing content online in a non-linear broadcast sense, where of course advertising is more relevant and where the restrictions have hitherto applied.
Stuart Smith.
Debate on this question now closed.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. A party vote's called for, Madam Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
Tori te kaumawha e whakahe.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Action New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes opposed.
Members, the ayes are 68, the noes are 54. The question is agreed to. Arina Williams's 25 tabled amendments to Clause 3 are ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The question is that Clause 3 stand part. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A party vote's called for, Madam Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
Tori te kaumawha e whakae.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Action New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes opposed.
Members, the ayes are 102, the noes are 20. The question is agreed to. We now come to our final debate. This is Clause 4 and the debate on the repeal of Section 81, advertising hours. The question is that Clause 4 stand part. Reuben Davidson.
Yeah, thank you. And I can't believe how quickly this debate has gone. It feels it's been lightning speed this afternoon moving through it. Hopefully we have some time at this crucial point of point 4 really focus on some of the questions still remaining at this point of the process. So what I wanted to do here, I am hoping for a number of calls on this clause because I do have a large number of questions, and many of them are on the basis of things that the Minister has said or answers that the Minister has given or points that he's referenced throughout his very generous answers, for which we're very grateful for as we've stepped through some of the meatier issues across clauses 1, clause 2 and clause 3 of the bill as we've gone through it this afternoon. The point I wanted to look at here, and this clause really deals with the repeal of section 81 of the Broadcasting Amendments Bill from 1989. The point I'm wanting to dig into a little here is the point 3, which talks about every person committing an offence being liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding $100,000. And that's for someone who contravenes either subsection 1 or subsection 2. And just to look at what those are, because I know with the number of days and potential opportunities we've discussed very robustly across the afternoon, it would be worth clarifying what is actually in the Act to ensure that the Minister can answer this as accurately as they are able. So in clause subsection 1, it speaks to no broadcaster broadcasting advertising programs on television during the hours between 6 a.m. and noon on a Sunday or on Anzac Day. And then it goes on to say on Christmas Day or Good Friday or Easter Sunday. Now the second part, and bearing in mind this is the part that we are repealing, is subject to subsection 4, no broadcaster shall broadcast advertising programs on radio. So the distinction there between television and radio, very important, on Christmas Day or Good Friday or Easter Sunday. And so to come back to the potential offence and the potential conviction with a fine not exceeding $100,000 for anyone who contravenes either of those sections. So when you are repealing this part of the Broadcasting Amendment Bill, then the question here is, of the Broadcasting Act, the question here really is, are we at a risk here of losing a source of revenue for government, because all money that comes into government can be spent on other things. So if we might argue about what it gets spent on and how, but we probably don't argue about the fact that that revenue comes in and can be quite useful. So the question here is, does the Minister have a sense, since 1989, of the, take a call if you like, sir, does the Minister have a sense since 1989 of the total revenue that's been gathered through those penalties, or even if that stretch of time, 36 years, is too long to quantify, even in the last 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, I don't know why we count in threes, but across potentially the last 3 electoral terms, can the Minister clarify the level of revenue that has come in, and therefore, if this part of the Act is repealed, that revenue can no longer be gathered? Can the Minister clarify the revenue that won't be coming in as a result of the repeal of this part of the Broadcasting Act? Because I think it would be irresponsible of any government and any government minister not to have a sense of the amount of money that will not be raised and that would not go into central government to be invested and spent wisely in other areas. And one of the questions there particularly is because we know that our broadcasting and media sector is really in need of support at the moment. So the potential for revenue from people who breach regulations to then be reinvested by way of potentially some sort of hypothecated fund structure back into the very sector that needs our support at the moment, and other than this very small amendment to the Broadcasting Act has seen nothing from the promised immediate action. So really an answer from the Minister about what potential revenue central government is being denied by the potential repeal of Section 81 of the Broadcasting Act would be great to have.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the member for his question, I think any foregone revenue in the form of penalties that won't be able to be applied would be outweighed by the taxable activity being the payment for the advertising.
Aruna Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've come to the pointy end of this debate about what is the effect of the repeal and whether there are any amendments that the Minister might accept for this part, because, as I've said, Madam Chair, we are going from a situation where there was no advertising allowed on Christmas, Easter, Anzac Day and Sunday mornings, and there will now be unrestricted advertising on those times. What's unusual about that is those are still important days, as the Minister has said, but for linear media now having no restrictions at those times is something that some people would consider unusual. So the first question I want to ask the Minister is the case that after this repeal is through, will it be acceptable, and does the Minister think it is acceptable to advertise gambling, alcohol and tobacco products on a Sunday morning?
Madam Chair. Reuben Davidson.
Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to take a further call on this part. I did know, I signalled that I would have several further questions for the Minister as we get to this final part of the bill, which I've inconveniently tucked down here, but there it is again, thank goodness for that. So one of the questions I had here, and we did speak through this at some length at an earlier point, but it was about the days that are affected by this repeal from Section 81, and that was Christmas, Easter. One of the things that was interesting is that that the bill doesn't include in that detailing Waitangi Day, and it doesn't include Matariki, so two other public holidays that the bill could have considered that would have been repealed. And I guess the question there for the Minister is, would the consideration have been given to retaining those two uniquely, and potentially Anzac Day as a uniquely New Zealand public holiday as well? Would there have been further consideration given to keeping those public holidays there, and so only amending the religious holidays but leaving the specifically New Zealand holidays? One of the other questions I've wondered about when I've looked at the structure of this bill and what it does and what it allows is whether we are leaders or followers. And I ask that in the context of a lot of the time the justification for the passing of this bill and for the existence of this bill is that there are two standards. There is a standard for online advertisers and online content that sits on digital platforms that can advertise almost whatever they want, whenever they want, on any day of the year for New Zealand audiences to see. And so this bill is about ensuring that broadcasters, linear broadcasters, both on television and radio, are able to enjoy the same rights and ability to share content and advertising as the digital platforms. But the question is, if the digital platforms hadn't chosen to advertise on those days, hadn't chosen to observe those holidays, would we have seen the need to follow? Are we chasing a space and an environment and a platform and an audience and eyeballs on days of the year, or that we would rather leave advertising and commercial free? Similarly, what this Act never prohibited was the sponsorship of content. So an event such as Coca-Cola Christmas in the Park could still be broadcast on Christmas Day, could still contain commercial content. So it was nibbling away at the edges and potentially has been nibbling away at the edges. And whilst we're happy to see that kind of sponsored content sitting in broadcasting and media, I don't think any of us would be comfortable with seeing that kind of sponsorship and underwrite and financing coming into this House and into the kind of policy and ideas that we bring forward and that we constructively work on together to turn into legislation and law. Now, the other point that I wanted to raise, and I hope if I can't fit it into this call that I may be afforded a further call on this final clause of the bill to be able to explore this more fully. But there are a number of businesses and there are a number of enterprises and trades and services that we would not expect, and often by law are not able to access or enjoy on specific public holidays. So by now granting those businesses, those enterprises, the right to advertise on those public holidays. There are two questions here. One is, does this signal a liberalisation of things like liquor licensing? Does this signal a liberalisation of trading hours for a number of businesses across religious and observed holidays? So, and if it doesn't, does this bill or the repeal make it a possibility that those businesses will in fact be false advertising or guilty of false advertising because they'll be offering a good or a service on a day that they're not open and that they're not trading and that they're not by law in New Zealand able to provide it. It's whether or not the Minister has considered that in this 73-word repeal bill. But what I would like to finish this contribution by acknowledging is that we have had some fun today in some of our contributions, but at the heart of this bill is the immediate need to serve those people who continue to lose their jobs in our broadcasting media industry in New Zealand by the hundreds, and this government has only delivered a 73-word bill in almost 2 years.
Jenny Marcroft.
Madam Chair, please take a call on this part of this bill that we are discussing here today in the House. Madam Chair, there's two themes I want to speak to. So I'll start with the first one, and looking at the advertising revenue, which is the basis of this piece of legislation, and enabling a greater flow of that into our broadcasters. It's important to note that radio, which has 2.7 million listeners every week tuning in with their pairs of ears, has strong, stable audience. And they're doing pretty well in the media landscape in comparison to other media. They already advertise on a Sunday morning, but it's television advertising that will be freed up here on the Sunday morning, as well as Anzac morning, and both TV and radio broadcasting advertising on Christmas Day, Good Friday and Easter Sunday. So that there is some advertising already from radio on a couple of those days already. So I'm really interested to know about how much advertising is expected to be generated by freeing up these days, and if the Minister could explain the advertising revenue expectations and how those assumptions were made. And is there any guarantee, in fact, if there's any new money that will be generated into the industry because their advertising revenues have been diminished for multiple reasons? And, you know, will those that are advertising, will they actually increase their budgets to that expected amount that this piece of legislation will enable and the numbers that have been forecast for it? Or will they simply cut the pie so that they stretch their advertising budgets over extra days and in fact actually not providing any further assistance financially for our various broadcasters that relate to this particular piece of bill? So, and has the government, has the Minister considered any other levers to enable broadcasters to find other ways of generating new revenue? So that's the first theme, with a couple of questions in there. And also to, as I didn't get the opportunity in earlier debates to talk about the importance of these sacred days, so I do want to just traverse that briefly, Madam Chair. Now, when the Broadcasting Act 1989 was drawn, yes, we were a different society then. We generally went to church. We had those religious days put aside for that religious observance. It was meaningful to us. And while not so many people might be attending a regular structured service anymore, it doesn't mean to say we're not still religious, we're not deeply spiritual. Some of those submitters on the bill, and about half of them opposed this piece of bill as they came through the Select Committee process. And I particularly note the likes of National Pacific Radio Trust. They felt that there was great disrespect towards our, not just fallen soldiers, but also towards Christianity as well. There was, I wonder whether there was any consideration, perhaps the Minister and the Chair could elucidate us, were there any other considerations government made around, like the Sweden model, where they do not allow any advertising around religious programming. Now, we know on a Sunday morning, Praise Be is a religious program. Was there any consideration maybe that program would not have any advertising around it to sort of protect the observance of that spiritual consideration and importance for many people? So those are the questions I have. Look forward to hearing from you.
Madam Chair.
Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the phrase praise be is most likely to come up when we finish this committee stage. But in terms of the questions asked by Ms Jenny Marcroft, and I acknowledge her expertise and experience in this space, it's impossible to know exactly how much will be generated. The figure of $6 million per year is considered a conservative estimate, but of course we'll see that in due course. As to other sources of government funding, I suppose New Zealand First conferences could be live streamed. That could be entertaining to watch those reruns appear. And in terms of other sources or policy proposals, I suppose we'll have to tune into anything else the member may have. But in terms of the questions asked prior to that by first Mr Ruben Davidson, he's described Anzac Day as a uniquely New Zealand holiday. I think Australia might want a word, but of course he's right to acknowledge that it is a particularly New Zealand holiday, maybe. But in any case, the question of partial repeal, I understand, was considered, but it would be difficult to enforce, and even so we then end up with that same difficulty about the inconsistency as between broadcast linear products as compared with the online environment. As for whether online advertisements, if they hadn't been engaging commercially on these particular days, would we still be in a position of seeking to repeal the restrictions on TV and radio? It's impossible to know. It's a hypothetical question, but I don't know if we can resolve the question of whether we would have followed or led, as the member has framed it. As for whether this legislation heralds some general liberalisation in relation to, for example, alcohol law, I think it's worth just seeing the legislation on its own terms and on its own face value. And as for whether there would be a question of false advertising if an ad were to flash up or to be heard saying that if you were to enter some premises that you could get, certain product or service on that day. I think the standard regime for advertising standards, with the authority having jurisdiction over any false or misleading or otherwise objectionable content, remains in place. I think this does lead us then to the question posed by Arana Williams as well, whether it's acceptable to advertise certain goods or services on these days that some people might take offence to. Taking the question of acceptability as a legal one as opposed to a moral one on which we can all form our own view, it seems to me that again, there are existing regimes in terms of what might be regarded as offensive or appropriate material, and if there's additional sensitivity that consumers and viewers, consumers of commercial services as well as consumers of the media content, might regard as being unhelpful or unwarranted on those particularly significant days, then that might be a question of judgment for the broadcaster and or the advertiser.
Tangi Manuel.
Tēnā rau atu koe e te manga o te whare, ka kōrero Māori anō au. Tēnā koe I te minita, tēnā koe e whakahoki ana I o mātou pātai I tēnei ahiahi, tēnā anō koe I o kōrero katakata I tēnei ahiahi. He pātai anō wāku e pāna ki te ao pāpāho Māori. E mohio ana mātou, I te wā I mahi au I te ao te pāpāho a Aotearoa, ara TVNZ, I tū tētahi wāhanga e kia nei ko te reo tātaki. I raro I te kāwanatanga a Nāhinara I whakakorengia te reo tātaki, e tonoa ki waho ngā hōtaka. Nā reira, kei te āhua mā harahara ētahi o ngā umanga hanga hōtaka, ara production companies, he pai te whakaaro o tēnei pere, kia whai pūtea ngā kamupene nui, engari, kei te haere te pūtea ki ngā kamupene nui, e hara ki ngā kamupene hanga hōtaka. Nā reira, me pēhea kei a koe he oranga mō rātou. Ki tua atu, I nukuhia ngā hōtaka Māori ki ngā ata o te rātapu. I raro I te whakaaro, e hara taua wāhi o te maramataka pāpāho, ara schedule, E hara taua wāhi o te rangi I te wāhi whai pūtea, non-commercial. Nā reira, mena ka whai pūtea ngā umanga nui I tēnei rā, ka pēhea ngā hōtaka Māori. He pai ki au te whakaro a te mema o Ngāhi Nara Aotearoa tuatahi a rā Marcroft. Kei te whakaro koe kei te whakaro koe ka rāhuitia etahi o ngā hōtaka, pērā ia praise be, pērā ia marae, wera atu kaupapa, aha rānei. Ki te kore, me pēhea koe e ārai, e manaaki nei I ngā hōtaka Māori. Tēnā anō koe e te minita I whakahoki mai, I whakautu mai o mātou pātai, he mihi hoki tēnei ki te hunga whakapākea I ngā kōrero, kia tarea te rere o tō tātou reoranga tira I roto I tō tātou whare. Kia ora.
Andy Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I have one area of question. It's for many New Zealanders, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Christmas and Anzac Day are deeply significant days. Now, we separate off the Sundays, which I think, we probably live with. Those 4 days, really, really significant days for New Zealanders. There is another bill which is being considered by a select committee at the moment, and that is the online gambling bill. Now, the online gambling bill includes the involving of advertising. And my question to you, Minister, is whether there's been any consideration to how having advertising for online gambling is going to go down in many New Zealand households if they are faced with that on those deeply significant spiritual days of Anzac Day, Christmas, Good Friday and Easter. And I suggest to you probably it will not be very well, and I would like your comment on that and whether that has actually been thought about at all in the compilation of this bill.
Madam Chair.
Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed legislation that the member references is not legislation. It would be, I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on what the ultimate shape of that might be as it relates to this. The comments that I've been making in the House previously have acknowledged the special significance of various days and would encourage, as far as it's appropriate for a government member to do so, advertisers and broadcasters to think carefully about content that might be viewed as appropriate by their respective audiences. In relation to the thoughtful questions posed by Kushla Taingere-Manuel, thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think in terms of the flow of revenue internally or as between content creators and the platforms themselves, I think that's an internal matter for those media companies, and I would only comment that in terms of this bill, by lifting the restrictions it will enable for more revenue to be generated and therefore a larger pie that can then be sliced and distributed as they see fit and as legally required, as the case may be.
Dr. Lawrence Yunnan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to pick up on something that the previous speaker, one of the previous speakers, Ruben Davison, mentioned in terms of the idea that this bill is intending to address a double standard between linear platforms and online platforms. And I'm particularly looking at, in the department report, paragraph 48, around the fact that, you do get these online and there are on-demand and online services that does allow. However, my question to the minister is the minister, first question, is the minister aware that YouTube, for example, doesn't allow, as an online platform, doesn't allow advertisement on these days? Therefore, you get YouTube, that is, anyone who watches YouTube on Christmas Day would know that YouTube doesn't have advertisement on Christmas Day. Like, my question is, if the idea of providing consistency, there are certain consistency between online platforms and linear platforms that already exist in the current environment. So the first question is the minister aware that YouTube doesn't have advertisement on certain days, similar to linear platforms? Then the follow-up question is, if indeed it's to provide consistency and now we are allowing it, is it also the situation that we are now then allowing online platforms that traditionally didn't have advertisement on those days, the ability to have advertisement on those days, and have the minister, or in this case potentially DIA or any other areas, have consulted or had conversation with those areas as with those online platforms such as YouTube as well on that. And for those who are saying, from the other side of the house, who are saying that that is not true, please provide a counter argument. I'm saying that this is my experience, that on Christmas Day there are no advertisement on YouTube. Tell me how you have seen advertisement on...
The member doesn't need to answer to those people, just questions.
But anyway, those are my questions to the Minister. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the member for his questions. My understanding is that some YouTube users choose not to monetise their content on certain days, including that must be the experience that members had, so I respect that, understand that. Certainly respect and understand that that's a choice that those content creators and uploaders may wish to take. And to be clear, we're not mandating or requiring that people should advertise on those days, and that goes for the linear broadcasters too, for that matter. But it'll be a matter of choice for all the reasons that we've been discussing this afternoon.
Vanessa Wening.
I move that debate on this question now close.
I'm going to get really tight now because it's a very narrow, small bill. So I call Arden Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On this clause, clause 4, which repeals Section 81, I have asked the Minister, and he has provided helpfully some background on what he says, legal goods and services, when he was there referring to alcohol, tobacco products and gambling, and gave us some advice that he wouldn't expect that to be at all prohibited on Sunday mornings. But I want to pose to him, really cutting to the chase of this, because I hear you, Madam Chair, I won't take him through all of the things that might be sensible middle grounds for this repeal, because the Minister did say that, there was some consideration of whether this, needed to be a full repeal from zero advertising with fines to then no restriction on what could be advertised or to who or in what way on those dates, because obviously there's a big range of options in the middle there. You could have restricted who might be advertised to, like children. You could have restricted the hours of advertising and carved out specific times. You could have also changed the nature of what could be advertised. But what I want to ask you, through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, would it not be appropriate then, if the primary legislation is not the place to do it, to be a bit more explicit about what the Advertising Standards Authority needs to do for those days? Because he has said that it's a moral judgment, that is the business of the Advertising Standards Authority, but they don't have specific powers around these days because they have never needed them, because there haven't been the need for the Advertising Standards Authority before to think about, say, advertising to veterans or about veterans on Anzac Day. They haven't had to consider advertising to Christian families and the followers of the church on Easter. They haven't had to think about whether it is appropriate to buy an advertising slot where you're not selling something, but it is in its nature something like an advertorial on a Sunday morning for a church, or for another sort of organisation like the Destiny Church to buy time in linear media on a Sunday morning. There are no restrictions on that, even though there is well-established case law on what might be considered something of an advertorial, something of editorial content, about how you might flag that up as something you have bought and not something that a broadcaster has deemed to be the right kind of content for that slot, and something that most New Zealanders would want to see in that slot. There hasn't been established case law, for instance, on Christmas morning about showing movies which depict Christ in any way, negatively or positively, because that has not been something that people have been able to buy before. But are there people who want to buy that content slot? Yes, there are people who want to show content in those times on specific days which are contrary to the views of most New Zealanders. We have very well developed case law, for instance, on what is acceptable speech on Anzac Day and what is acceptable to do at an Anzac Day celebration, Remembrance Day or parade. And there are things which we say are not acceptable, like students presenting wreaths and then turning their backs to protest war. That's not acceptable because we say those things are protected and those things are things that we as all New Zealanders should treat as remembrance and honourable times. Is it now acceptable to book an ad slot and run an ad, which is not in fact trying to advertise any given product, but because you have paid for it, you can make your political views expressed about what Anzac Day should be and what war should be? We need to be clear that if the Minister is not willing to entertain any other sorts of changes to this primary legislation, which his government colleagues in the New Zealand First Party have put to him very sensible suggestions, then will he not at least accept one of my amendments, there are only two, that would make it clear that the Advertising Standards Authority needs some extra powers here to consider those specific days and what might be appropriate. A third option would be, I think, the option that he has said, which is that broadcasters need to satisfy themselves what is appropriate. If that is his policy, then the legislation should say that, and I would suggest to him that an appropriate amendment to the body of Clause 4 would be insertion before the full stop of, and replace it with new Clause 81E, which reads, broadcasters shall only air advertising programs on television during the hours between 6 a.m. and noon on Sunday, Anzac Day and Christmas that are deemed appropriate by them for those days. That would at least create some sort of reasonable obligation that most New Zealanders would expect, and he himself has alluded to.
Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really briefly, if I can respond to those important points. The Advertising Standards Authority will continue to have a mandate to uphold standards of decency, social responsibility and consider questions of offensiveness. I think that they would do that in the context of all the circumstances, including, as they currently do, time of day, but also the particular day of the year and its special significance. So I think these are serious matters, but I also think that we must be able to trust our institutions to be able to make reasonable judgment calls in the fullness of the context in which they occur. And for that reason, we think it's best not to be too prescriptive or to try to over-engineer the solution that might seem tempting, devoid of context, to particular members of the House with particular perspectives, bearing in mind the broad range of views of New Zealanders on various different matters. And in the case of Anzac Day, it seems to me actually the legal precedent is strongly in favour of freedom of expression under Section 14 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act, the Morse case that the member may have studied at law school, as did I, whereby the burning of a flag on Anzac Day was not legally prohibited precisely because we value that freedom of expression, notwithstanding the fact that that might be, and in fact deliberately was designed to calculate the offence and the outrage of some. So I think taking into account that broader context, we've landed in the right place, which is to be enabling, but to say not as a matter of law, but encouragement that people will make appropriate choices and will be judged accordingly.
Tom Rutherford.
I move that debate on this question now close.
The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau mai iwa nā puti tautoko ana.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes opposed.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 54. The question is agreed. All of Aruna Williams's tabled amendment to the title of Clause 4 are ruled out of order as not being in the correct form of legislation. The question is that Aruna Williams's tabled amendment to Clause 4, inserting new Section 81A, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau mai iwa nā puti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Action New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81B, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekoma iwa na poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Action New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes opposed.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81C, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekoma iwa na poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Action New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81D, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekoma iwa na poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Action New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81E, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekoma iwa na poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Action New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81F, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. The eye has it. Yeah, I was starting to wonder that. The vote doesn't reflect that a party vote is being called for.
New Zealand National.
E whatekona iwa na poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Action New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81G, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatakoma iwa ngā poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81H, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatakoma iwa ngā poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81I to prohibit the broadcasting of offensive programs on certain days, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatakoma iwa ngā poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81I to prohibit misleading programs on certain days, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. The noes have it.
Ayes have it. Party vote.
Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatakoma iwa ngā poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81J to prohibit advertising targeting children on certain days, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatakoma iwa ngā poti whakahei.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to clause 4, inserting new section 81J to prohibit advertising targeting vulnerable people on certain days be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau mai na iwa na poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Oh, okay. The question is that Aotearoa Williams has tabled amendment to Clause 4 inserting new Section 81J to prohibit advertising of financial products on certain days be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau na iwa na poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 opposed. New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Aotearoa Williams has tabled amendment to Clause 4 inserting new Section 81K is ruled out of order as being the same in substance as a previous amendment. The question is that Aotearoa Williams has tabled amendment to Clause 4 inserting new Section 81L be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau ma iwa na poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 opposed. New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams has tabled amendment to Clause 4 inserting new Section 81M be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau ma iwa na poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 opposed. New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams has tabled amendment to Clause 4 inserting new Section 81N be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau ma iwa na poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 opposed. New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams has tabled amendment to Clause 4 inserting new Section 81P be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whatekau ma iwa na poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 in favour. 11 opposed. New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 4, inserting new section 81Q, be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whātakau mā iwa nā poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 opposed. New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to replace Clause 4 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whātakau mā iwa nā poti whakahea.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand. 11 opposed. New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes in favour.
The ayes are 54, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Clause 4 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
E whātakau nā iwa poti te toko ana.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand. 11 in favour. New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
5 votes opposed.
The ayes are 94, the noes are 28. The question is agreed. I will report this bill without amendment.
Nice, man. Thanks, man.
The House is resumed.
Madam Speaker, the committee has considered the Broadcasting Repeal of Advertising Restrictions Amendment Bill and reports it without amendment. Madam Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This bill is set down for third reading next sitting day. I call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Privacy Amendment Bill interrupted debate on third reading.
Members, when we were last debating this bill, we were up to call number 4, which was the ACT Party call.
Madam Speaker.
I called Todd Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, it was interrupted on the 20th of May, so it's been a wee while since we've discussed this bill, but we are discussing the Privacy Amendment Bill, and it's my happy pleasure to speak on behalf of ACT. This was a bill that was before my select committee, but it is an important bill updating some pieces of the Privacy Act, in particular introducing a new privacy principle to ensure that individuals are properly informed when their personal information is being collected from third parties. It makes sure that its public expectations around this information are clear, and we're operationalising some nice changes. I don't want to say too much on this bill because I think it is pretty straightforward, but I, again, just do want to reiterate one of the important changes that the Select Committee did make was around ensuring that really information when it's being used for public goods, so galleries, libraries, archives and museums wouldn't be inhibited by these new principles, and that there was an exception added to the bill, which was accepted. So really very happy to commend this bill to the House and get this new privacy principle in place. Thank you.
Honourable Casey Costello.
Madam Speaker, I arrive on behalf of New Zealand First to speak in this, the third reading of the Privacy Amendment Bill. It is an important piece of legislation. To exercise privacy rights, it is important to know or have knowledge about the collection of the information from, where it is not from the source that is the individual themselves. And so putting these protections in place and upholding the individual's rights to will be upholding the individual's rights to privacy. It is good that there will be a lead-in implementation time to give that scope to make sure these things are corrected. But in this day and age, it is really critically important that the individuals know and have control over the information that is held about them, and you cannot invoke that power if you're not clear about where this information is sourced from. So this is an important piece of legislation. New Zealand First commends the bill to the House.
The next call is a split call. I call Tamitha Paul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise on behalf of the Pāti Kākāriki to give our support to this bill. It's always nice when there are bills that come through the House that most of us can support and work together on. The Privacy Amendment Bill was one of the first few bills that came through the Justice Committee at the beginning of this term, and it was great to be contacted by different librarians and archivists who have a real interest in making sure that people's rights and privacy and information is both protected but also treated with sensitivity, and also that when information is within the public interest, that it is able to be accessed. So we have a fairly short contribution to make, like the two speeches before me, to say that we support this bill and that we hope that this will ensure both private information is held sensitively and securely, and that people who collect information such as libraries, archives and the like, and all of those groups that have been involved in developing this bill are able to do their jobs. Thanks.
In this final reading for the Privacy Amendment Bill. And Madam Speaker, what I'd like to just comment on is that in this fast-changing world, a digital world, it's great to progress a bill like this that further protects the personal information of all my neighbours in Takanini. I commend this bill to the House.
Honourable Dr Duncan Webb.
Kia ora, te mana whakawā. I wouldn't be dismissive about this bill. It is an important bill, but some speakers in this debate have kind of skimmed over why. This bill is about the collection of information and the provision of it to third parties. And I just want to identify what a huge trade that in fact is. And if we think about it, there is a steady business in trading in personal information. For example, marketing schemes. Your loyalty card that you use at the supermarket is gleaning information, which by using that card you have agreed can be provided to third parties. So they know what kind of pâté you like with your wine on that side of the house, or what kind of toast you like with your baked beans on this side of the house. And that can be passed on for marketing information. That's just one example. Another example, of course, is credit reporting, where any time you go to a bank or another financial institution or get your Q card or use Afterpay, you are also agreeing to that information being passed on to third parties for their use. And I think we need to recognise that each of us will have, if you've borrowed money at all, and most of us will have essentially a file held at various credit agencies. And that information has been provided by third parties. And then there's another one that's cropped up recently, and I see the Minister of Police in the House, and that is the use of digital images that are gained from generally security or surveillance cameras. And they are private surveillance cameras. They might be in public places or in supermarkets, but they are cameras where the feed is sent to a central repository, Aotearoa, and that data can be filtered. So if it will know, for example, what supermarket you were in when, what your car number plate is. And that car number plate can be tracked. And this is what the police have been using it for recently. So that if they know that a suspect was in a particular car, they go to this commercial provider and ask for the information that it has gleaned from its network of cameras. And you can track the car. So this use of third-party information is not without its risks and pitfalls. And for everyone to stand up and go, oh, it's a good bill, I want to go home, thanks very much, isn't really good enough. It's not doing our job. So what this bill actually does is adopt some frameworks and standards which are based on the European Union best practice, and we have tended to lean towards the European Union for guidance in this area. And it is also important that we do that because our trading relationships and so on rely on that. And what this bill does, and the guts of the bill is set out in the section 22, provides that where an agency collects personal information about an individual other than from the individual concerned, so if I want to know what cornflakes you get and I don't ask you, I ask your supermarket, who has your permission to provide that information, then the agency must take any steps that are in the circumstances reasonable to ensure that individual concerned is aware that the information is being collected, the purpose for which it's being collected, and who the intended recipients are. So that when we enter into these arrangements, we actually know that our information can be provided to credit agencies and to marketing agencies. Of course, when your information, and I do think the surveillance cameras raise real issues, because I'm not sure any of us consent to information about our movements being provided to third parties, including the police. So there's a real rights issue in there, not just a privacy right, but wider rights issues about search and seizure as well. So I do think we've got to be vigilant around this, and this is actually about vigilance. And I actually think, and this is why we had the museums and archives come to us and say, well, hang on, we collect information about third parties all the time, but in a very non-invidious way. It's not really about them. They're just on record as having been the collector or the author of particular documents. It's more for historical purposes. But I think there's going to be a lot of people out there who, once the Privacy Commissioner starts educating people around this, will get a bit of a fright, because they'll realise, I've been collecting all this information, essentially harvesting it, and either for, not-for-profit purposes or for-profit, whether it be an NGO who's got a social purpose, but they've still got to comply with this legislation, or someone who's getting information using AI to curate it, for the very best targeted advertising is the classic example, and then passing it on or selling it off to someone who can best use it. They're going to have to kind of buck up their ideas. So I think they really will need to know about that. So that's why we're supporting the bill, because it's actually an important privacy protection, and actually it's a bit of a gap in the legislation that's been there to date, where you could get this information from third parties. So look, We do think it's good, but we don't think it's trivial. And that's why we've spent considerable time thinking about it and improving it through Select Committee and, of course, Committee of the Whole. So we do commend this bill to the House.
Tom Rutherford.
Madam Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
Madam Speaker.
Glenn Bennett.
Madam Speaker, we take privacy very seriously on this side of the House, and therefore want to lay out a few reflections and thoughts on this legislation, Madam Speaker. The Privacy Amendment Bill, obviously, we're at the stage and in the third reading, where it is, I guess this evening, depending on how things go, it is the potential of becoming law. And as my learned colleague, who has far more to say and far more eloquently has told you, the Honourable Dr. Duncan Webb, that the importance of what this legislation does and why we need it. And as I was looking at the legislation and I was looking at some of the commentary and some of the information that prepared us for it, it did mention Transparency International and their critique of New Zealand, of the New Zealand government, and Transparency International talked about New Zealand having some of the lowest perceived corruption and ensuring that members of the public know when agencies, to make sure that people know when agencies have collected or held personal information, and how it goes a long way to strengthening that trust. And that this bill is in line with high quality privacy. Now, Madam Speaker, in this modern day and age, as the world moves and shifts and changes, there are so many places and spaces, as my colleague has said, where information is gathered. And we need to make sure that we know, and that myself as a consumer, myself as a citizen, understands and knows what happens with information about myself, where it goes, who has it, to make sure that my privacy is protected, but also that the privacy of my family is protected and the privacy of my community. And so that's why this legislation is here. And as has been said, it's taken its time, it's come through the House, it's been through Select Committee, and it is here today to receive the approval of this Parliament. Currently, there is no requirement for an agency, public or private, to notify an individual when it collects personal information about the individual indirectly. And as has been talked about, things like your EFTPOS cards, things like car registrations, things, for example, how often do you park at a Wilson car park or other private car parks? And in terms of the information you have to share on the machine, but also the cameras and the CCTV that is around that actually informs people of what is going on and what your movements are. And also think about us as parliamentarians and some of the challenges and some of the spaces that occupy, for example, our ECA offices, and the fact that when we meet with constituents, we meet with constituents about issues that are important to them, but sometimes those issues are sensitive. Sometimes those issues do involve law enforcement. Sometimes those issues do involve challenges that they're facing in front of the courts, etc. And so for us to make sure that their privacy is protected, to make sure that if there is CCTV cameras outside our offices, that what happens when they want to actually disclose maybe some serious offending, or they want to actually they want to speak to us about something that has happened in their community, or someone of note that needs to see us. So we need to make sure that privacy is upheld, that organisations like Transparency International can continue to look at New Zealand favourably and say, it's not only the perception of what we're doing, but it's also that the laws of this land are in place and are set to make sure that we do have decent privacy. Now, individuals need to know who has collected their information in order to make corrections to that information. Individuals need to know who has collected their information so that they are aware of what is going on in their world, what is going on in their wheelhouse, to make sure that they can protect themselves and their families, as I said. So, Madam Speaker, we on this side support this legislation. We think it is practical, It is important, it is necessary, and I commend this bill to the House.
Tim Crossley.
Madam Speaker, I'd stand here and talk about how focused we are on making life more affordable and delivering better opportunities to every family in this country.
Except it doesn't fit in this bill.
But for this bill, I just want to say I commend it to the House.
Vanushi Walters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for an opportunity to stand and speak in favour of this bill. Much like my colleague, the Honourable Dr Duncan Webb, I'm of the view that this is an issue that we ought to give the House's time to. It's actually an extremely important issue. When reviewing the bill, I must admit I wasn't on the Select Committee when submissions were being considered, but reviewing the bill, I thought about how the concept of privacy has shifted over the last 30 years. So when we had the 1993 Act in place, I would have been probably about 11 or 12, do the backwards math. But it was in the days when most things were on paper, whether you were interacting with your medical practitioner, with your school, and certainly in terms of interacting online, this was the days of turning up to school to have your 5 to 10 minutes playing lemmings before school. A very, very different time in terms of how information was generated, a very different time in terms of how information was held, and a very different time in terms of how information was shared. So it's unsurprising that when we got to 2020, we absolutely did need a very substantial update of both how those rules of privacy would operate in a modern world, but also the associated penalties, which is where we saw a lot of that reform in 2020. And we're supportive of this reform as well, because I think the massive change we're seeing is that sharing between third parties, that it is no longer about being sure that you can access and correct information when you hand it over to an entity. You simply can't always be sure of where that information will end up. So it is absolutely the right time for us to be thinking about this important issue in terms of being notified. However, like Dr Duncan Webb, I would like to point to a few issues where I'm of the view we need to very closely monitor whether the legislation is sufficient, because I do think this is an area where our notion of privacy will continue to shift and move, but also some of the specific exemptions in the current legislation, which are drafted quite broadly. And I think that the House should bear in mind whether those are being used in the way that we intend them in the coming years. The first thing I wanted to raise was something that was raised by the Law Society, and they raised the issue of the connection between knowledge and control. So a privacy right should involve both. The ability to know where your private information is, but also have it corrected or deleted if it's inaccurate. And there is a bit of a gap in terms of this legislation coming through the pipeline. There are, of course, administrative and logistic issues in terms of why you wouldn't want to overwrite an ability to demand that something be deleted. However, I do think that it is a valid gap that was raised by the Law Society, and I would urge the House to keep an eye on how this plays out and whether that gap creates issues. The exceptions that are in there at the moment, we have the exception of the individual who has already been notified through other processes. This one's fine. I think that's absolutely acceptable, that of course there shouldn't be a double obligation to notify an individual who essentially already knows. The second one is interesting. This is new IPP 3A4A. It is where it's the entity determines that there's no prejudice to the individual. Now that is extremely broad in terms of the judgment that we're handing over for an entity to decide whether there is no prejudice to the individual. The third one is where it's not reasonably practical to do so. Now, the rules are helpful and they state that this goes beyond inconvenience or cost. The burden must be clearly disproportionate. However, there is still a subjective element there. And I do think this is another thing that, of course, we would expect the Privacy Commissioner to be monitoring, but the House must as well. And then there are additional exceptions which apply in more limited context. The one that I'll note is where notification would undermine the purpose of collection, such as an internal investigation. Now, we need to think carefully about that, because these are circumstances where an individual is potentially under investigation by a third party whom they did not share their information with, and the exception here is applying to those circumstances. And I think we need to be very cautious about how this might play out in terms of employment scenario, how it might play out in terms of law enforcement scenario as well. There are some useful protections within the legislation, having framed some of those broad provisions in terms of decision making. One of them is that the agency should maintain a documented basis for relying on their exceptions. So they can't rely on an exception and expect it to hold for the end of time. They have to continue to justify that exception, and I think that that's correct. Another concern I have is the direction that the Commissioner should only be notified where there is a risk of serious harm. So we're coming into the territory of determination again. We're essentially creating a set of rules which are great. We're adding additional protections to privacy, but we're creating huge discretion that we're placing in the hands of entities to determine when those circumstances happen. So you've got the Privacy Commissioner there, and we're now saying only instances where the entity thinks there's serious harm. That's one layer of the problem. The second layer of the problem in terms of access to justice is that when people make a complaint to the Privacy Commissioner, they don't have automatic right to go to the Director of the Office of Human Rights Proceedings. The Privacy Commissioner will make a referral. From what I can see, the referrals from the Privacy Commissioner are fairly few and far between. So you might have one, two cases progressing every year. So unless you can afford to take your own case through that channel, you're relying on getting through several more hurdles before you can actually have your case heard by the Director's Office and then brought before the tribunal. Your next barrier is actually being heard by the Human Rights Review Tribunal. So if you've got a complaint, my privacy's been breached, someone's breached the Act, you go to the Privacy Commissioner, maybe one or two are referred to the Director's Office for pro bono representation. You're then facing a 1 to 2 year delay potentially before your claim is heard. Now my issue here is that in this year's budget, that timeline is potentially much worse. And it's because we had six decision makers at the Human Rights Review Tribunal, 2 chairs, 4 deputy chairs. In this year's budget, those 4 deputies have been taken away. So their roles have not been renewed, new appointments have not been made. Essentially, we've gone down from 6 decision makers to 2 decision makers. If you want to have your privacy issue heard, you may be waiting for several years to have that decision heard, that issue heard. So my point here is this: we commend the fact that the government are looking at developing the right to privacy in accordance with what we're seeing happen in our world, that we have departments and entities who are interacting with each other more. We're looking at an online world. We're very much going to need to develop the right to respond to that as well. But the right alone, the development of the right and legislation alone, doesn't allow people access to justice, doesn't allow people to have that right upheld. If you change the right, but you remove access to justice, you take decision makers down from 6 decision makers, to 2 decision makers, you have a bottleneck in terms of accessing the right to privacy. So I just urge the government to think through the full scope of access to justice when they're thinking about the development of a right, whether it be privacy or another right, and ensure that not only do we have adequate provisions for the right to privacy, that we're monitoring how it plays out, that we're monitoring the discretion that we're giving, that we're monitoring whether we should be developing that right in accordance with what we are seeing in terms of the EU, and fundamentally, that we're funding our courts and that we have the appropriate number of decision makers to ensure that people truly have access to justice.
Carlos Chung.
Or people in my war school, this bill is a critical step toward protecting our privacy and ensuring fairness for all New Zealanders. I commend this bill to the House.
Honourable Karen McAnulty won that race by, I guess we can't call it by a nose in this house, can we? But this is the race for the Te Pāti Māori call. I call Honourable Karen
Thank
McAnulty.
you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the reference. Of course, it is a horse racing reference, and that is my background, so thank you for saying that. I certainly do not have the background of my esteemed colleagues. It is somewhat, I guess, it makes someone a little bit self-conscious when you're following a professor of law and a distinguished human rights lawyer, and Glenn Bennett, who contributed to this speech, but at least they contributed, Madam Speaker. It has been a pretty dismal display from the government, really, to be honest. They've certainly earned their paycheck today, standing up and saying, I commend the bill to the House, and then they sit down. But this bill does deserve commentary, Madam Speaker, and before I do provide some comments on this, I want to acknowledge that very shortly a member of this House will be doing their valedictory speech based on a decision that they've made for their safety and the safety of their child. And I think that situation should give us all pause for thought, every single one of us in this House, and indeed every single member of this country. I think it is a significant moment in the history of this Parliament, and it is a very sad moment, frankly, and I wish Benjamin and their whānau all the very best after this moment. Madam Speaker, this bill ideally would be a situation where the public could see that both sides were cooperating. It is indeed an example of that. Many people, as my mate Duncan Webb pointed out, would be quite surprised that the provisions in this bill that the bill proposes aren't actually already in place. And I would have thought, and I will count myself as one of those, frankly, I would have thought that what's being proposed is pretty basic provisions, really, that people should really know who is collecting that sort of information about them and what their rights are and what they are able to do about it. I do think it is lamentable, though, that we aren't actually giving the public of New Zealand the opportunity to understand the amount of work and the amount of collaboration that gone into where we are in this bill. So often, the proceedings of this place and coverage of politics is portrayed to be adversarial, but actually more often than not, or certainly more often than people are made to realise, is that there is collaboration in Parliament, and this is an example of it, because of course there isn't much in here that would warrant opposition to it. My colleague Venushi Walters pointed out some very sage points of concern, but it doesn't warrant strong opposition to what's being proposed, but it does send a warning that we need to be very careful about how we go about this. The fact is that with not just the digitalisation, but in a large part because of it, all the things that we have on our phone, the various apps, the shopping cards, everything else, it might be your Air New Zealand app or whatever, everything that we go about our day-to-day lives collects information. And so often, when we just go about our daily business, information about us is being shared and we don't know about it. And that is actually quite extraordinary. So it is only right that the bill proceeds and that New Zealanders are given the opportunity to understand who has what information, who is sharing it and for what purpose, but more importantly, the rights of the individual related to that they have if they want to look into it or do anything about it, or indeed correct the information, because the information that's being shared might not be accurate, and that's a concern as well. But we've all seen it. Various things, it might be social media, it might be all sorts of other things. We might start to get targeted mail, we might start to get targeted advertisements because they've been monitoring what sort of garden garden tools you like, you've been searching or whatever. I tell you what, the thing is that when there is an exemption, there needs to be a good reason. And I think in general, what the bill proposes makes sense. But I do want to echo the concerns raised that, of course, when things of national security are at threat, there should be an exemption. But who decides that? According to this, it's the agency themselves. And if they are abusing that exemption against the intention of the law, how does an individual have the opportunity to know that, and for how long will it take for them to find that information out? I think it's a valid question, and it's one that actually deserves ongoing oversight. Yes, this bill is good. Yes, we support it, but there are still some questions, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Privacy Amendment Bill, third reading.
I call on Government Order of the Day number 3.
Interrupted debate on the second reading of the Crimes Countering Foreign Interference Amendment Bill.
Members, when we were last on this bill, Dr. Lawrence Yunnan had the call and has 5 minutes and 34 seconds remaining to speak.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much. I will be interested to see if my speech gets cut off again this time, because it was cut off halfway last time for a special debate.
No, you're okay. You're okay. This
I am
time.
okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to pick up on where we left off last time in terms of the Crimes Countering Foreign Interference Amendment Bill, there are a couple of things I want to address now, noting that we are in the second reading and there is an opportunity for us to ask the Minister additional questions during the committee stage. But at this stage in the second reading, based on our understanding in the Select Committee stage, the Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand will not be supporting this bill. Now, the reason for that is there are numerous, and they are because of the fact the bill is complex. Firstly, we are seeing, during the Select Committee stage, we're seeing that this bill, in terms of the new offences that are going to be created, overlaps with a number of existing offences within the Crimes Act. But I think more importantly, Madam Speaker, that there are some fundamental concerns that the Green Party has in terms of this bill's interaction with NZ-BORA. A couple of points I want to address specifically. I think one of the first ones is around section 19 of NZ-BORA in terms of its connection with the Human Rights Act, and specifically section 21 of the Human Rights Act against discrimination. There is a concern that this bill will inadvertently, even though it's not necessarily in the content of the bill, but inadvertently target certain communities more stringently than others. The other point that I mentioned in the first half of my contribution, Madam Speaker, is that we are seeing a change in the demographics of Aotearoa and New Zealand. And with that, we're seeing complexities in terms of the interactions within our own communities. And with that, we are seeing the potential challenges when it comes to the freedom of association, and particularly when we're looking at things like protest and activism of all forms, which is within the people's right to do here in Aotearoa. And I think even though any form of intimidation or violence as a part of that and potentially come about as a result of certain protests and activation may result in that intimidation or violence, but they are already considered as a criminal offense under the Criminals Act. So again, the idea that this bill doesn't necessarily serve the kind of purpose that the bill is intending to serve that isn't already captured in the existing legislation. There is also a concern in terms of how the bill is going to be brought about and then how they are going to be assessed. One of the things that specifically is a challenge within the bill is around the idea of omission. And so we're looking at, for example, Clause 8 and the new Section 69A inserted. Omission is a really tricky thing when we're looking at criminal offense because it shifts the burden of proof from the Crown, from the prosecutor to the defendant. And I think particularly in a stage where if we are going to be having something like this, I don't know if, at least the select committee stage, we weren't able to find out how the defendants who are now responsible for that burden of proof are going to be fully exercising their right in order to defend themselves, particularly when we're still seeing cultural barriers and language barriers within our court system. Finally, I think that is another one of the major concerns we have, and we're happy to engage with the Minister during the committee stage to tease some of that out further. Finally, there is a general trend that we're seeing and the concern that, again, certain communities in Aotearoa are going to be more stringently and more critically targeted as a result of some of these bills, and particularly in light of some of the recent trends we're seeing in terms of our ties with, let's say, Five Eyes. That is something that is of deep concern for the Greens, and it's something that also changes the balance in terms of our interactions and our independent ability to have that independent foreign policy. What is traditionally forms a backstage data collection role has now taken a very prominent center stage in terms of our foreign affairs policy and also in terms of our ability to defend ourselves. So the Green Party likes the intention of this bill that yes, Aotearoa New Zealand does need to have mechanisms that prevents itself from being a target of foreign interference, but what we're seeing is that foreign interference through the select committee stage hasn't been able to tease out to capture some of the concerns that we've had. And I think another really important concern as a part of that is what constitutes as foreign interference. Because frankly, Madam Speaker, in some of my portfolios, such as education, we're seeing a great deal of foreign interference from the US and UK in terms of the direction of our education policy. Would that be considered foreign interference under the current legislation? That is something that we simply don't know. So at this stage, the Green Party cannot support this bill.
Todd Stevenson.
Madam Speaker, it gives me pleasure to rise on behalf of ACT and speak on the Crimes Countering Foreign Interference Amendment Bill. I was lucky enough to be on the Justice Select Committee, which obviously looked at this bill. It has been recommended unanimously that it is supported in this House, and that's what ACT will be doing. It is really, foreign interference is actually a clear and present danger. In fact, just this week we heard of a foreign government interfering with a potential activity at Victoria University, for example. And so this bill really is ensuring that we strengthen the protections. A lot of it is actually codifying some of the existing laws, but making sure that they are much clearer. And we do want to make sure that there is no foreign interference from foreign powers within New Zealand, and just really making sure it's very clear that some new offences are created around that. It also, does create these new offences to address some gaps in criminal liability and ensure that really that the police and other enforcement agencies have the powers needed. So I do recommend this bill to the House on behalf of ACT. Thank you.
Honourable Casey Costello.
Speaker, I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak in favour of the Crimes Countering Foreign Interference Amendment Bill. As Minister of Customs, I have the privilege of being aware of the growing challenges that we have internationally, and that as the Associate Minister of Immigration, a recognition of the challenges that we're facing across our international borders. The fact that this unrest does create an elevated level of risk from foreign interference is something we cannot ignore. It is important that we continue to evolve and respond and develop the powers and authorities and the abilities for us to keep New Zealand citizens safe. And this is the protection from foreign interference is exactly one more step in that direction. It is about the protection of our people. It is about the protection of New Zealanders, and having the legislation and the powers that gives us the investigation rights. It gives us the ability to send a clear message that we are ensuring that our enforcement agencies have the powers they need, but also that we are sending a strong message, and I therefore commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
This debate is interrupted, and when I have swapped seats with Mr. Speaker, we will continue.
Members, in accordance with the determination of the Business Committee, will now have a valedictory statement from Benjamin Doyle. Following the valedictory statement, the House will adjourn until 2 p.m. on Tuesday, 7th of October 2025. Benjamin Doyle.
E te mangai. I did not come here on my terms. I was summoned under difficult and unexpected circumstances, but I accepted that call. Today, however, I leave by choice, not because I want to, but because I have chosen to put my child first. If our tamariki are the reason for being here, how could they not be our reason for leaving? Nothing is more important and precious than those we love most. For them, we must live and fight and at times choose to leave. This place was not built for people like me, which is precisely the point. It was built on the basis of exclusion and control, on taking, hoarding, and guarding power. The colonizer's tools will never dismantle the colonizer's house. It's taken me 10 months to truly comprehend what that means. And while I do not accept that change is impossible from inside, I have come to learn that it comes with a price of violence and hate towards my people. This is a price I am no longer willing to pay. I have felt firsthand the unbelievable impact that being here can have on a person and those they love. I have seen that play out in violent, toxic, and real-world ways. No person should have to remove their child from school due to threats to their life. No person should have to avoid going to the supermarket or the letterbox because they have been advised that doing so could expose them to violence. No person should have to tell their parents that they can't attend the next family event to ensure their safety and privacy is not compromised. And despite that, I have stayed so true to myself and my community. I returned to Parliament when I was informed it would be unsafe to do so, because sometimes love is hard and means making sacrifices. Sometimes it means putting the kaupapa first, putting the needs of our communities, the planet, the generations that are yet to arrive first. I am willing to put my love for these things before my own needs and even my own safety. But no love is more compelling than that which we hold for our tamariki. And I cannot continue to put this work before the needs of my own child. And so I leave this place knowing that the fight will continue, as it always has and always will. But that fight is also happening right now outside these walls, on the streets, on the land and on the sea, in our communities, in our hearts and in our minds. Power does not reside here. It is not inherent in this place. We have only allowed that to be so. Power resides in the human spirit and in our relationships with one another and with this precious earth to which we owe everything. I rejoin that fight now and wish my comrades here my love and solidarity in the fight they continue in this place. This is a hostile and toxic place. especially if you're not a cis, straight, white man with a blue suit and a briefcase. But most of all, it is not fit for purpose. As a nation, we must reckon with this reality. A political system imposed upon this land and its people from a colonial empire which sought to name, claim, and maim is never going to honour te tiriti. It will never recognise the dignity of all life or seek justice for the poor and oppressed. It was built to serve a status quo that protects the powerful at the expense of the people, at the cost of community. This system was built, and so it can be rebuilt. The revolution begins in our hearts and minds, but there it must not remain. It must rise up from the land, from the people, from love and vision and hope for something infinitely better than what we are subjected to now. If not for us, then for our children and those in every generation to come. As long as bombs are dropping in Gaza, in Yemen, in Syria and Qatar, as long as the lungs of the earth are being burnt and felled, as long as our rivers and oceans are being pillaged, polluted and desecrated, as long as the land is being ripped open and exploited for finite resources, as long as the dignity of life is being denigrated and discarded in servitude and civil war, as long as Indigenous rights are being eroded, trans lives are being taken, disabled folks are being degraded, children's voices are being ignored, women's bodies are being controlled, and the rights of people in prison are being stripped. This is a place of no peace and no justice. Nobody is free until everybody is free. And this House must recognise that fundamental truth. If it does not, it risks being left behind as community forges ahead in building its own future, one we can be proud to pass on to our mokopuna. I concluded my maiden speech with a poem by a Palestinian poet named Refat al-Arir, who was murdered by Israel during the genocide it continues to commit in Palestine. Today I will conclude with a different poem, one by Tina Ngata, titled Rekindled. The truth, while spoken, never dies. It is a flame that may rest as smouldering embers, perhaps for generations. Yet, through these lines, it will rekindle. We are the flame that never died. At hunga hunga toroa, at wairinga ahika, at ngā tapa, and for as long as I breathe my story, I am not vanquished. I am at once the victor and the fallen, still here today, walking, breathing, laughing, dancing, lovemaking, testifying proof against any notion of conquest, speaking our truth, honouring those who slipped between the privileged pages of this story, loving new generations into being, new bearers of the flame that never dies. Mana whakapapa, mana tuakiri, mana tagata pui e. Ahu ahu mai, ahu ahu atu, kia tau ai te mauri, I roto I a koe. Ko hine ti tama koe, ko hine nui te pō koe, ko ia rā ko te whakaahuatanga. Mana māre kura, mana whatu kura, mana takata puhi e. Rere mai nuku, rere mai rangi, ki hatau, whakatau ha e. Uhi, wero, tau mai te māhana, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Ko te triti, ko te tiriti, o Waitangi, ti tiriti o Aotearoa, hiki tia ki runga, hiki tia ki runga. Mō tuha ke ranga, tiratanga tuku iho, ko te triti, ko te tiriti, o Waitangi, kia kaha, kia mau, ti hei, mauri ora.
The House stands adjourned.